The driver who saved the runaway bride, but lost everything trying to protect her. What happens when a single father with nothing to lose helps a billionaire heiress escape the biggest mistake of her life? Evan Hale made a choice that morning, a choice that would destroy reputations, ignite headlines, and force two people from completely different worlds to answer one impossible question. Can love survive when everything else falls apart? Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and comment your city below so I can see how far this journey travels. The rain came down in sheets that Tuesday morning, turning Fifth Avenue into a river of brake lights and steam. Evan Hale sat behind the wheel of the black Mercedes S-Class, watching water streak down the windshield in patterns that reminded him of the tears his daughter had cried the night before. Another nightmare. Another hour rocking her back to sleep, whispering promises he wasn't sure he could keep. Everything's gonna be okay, sweetheart. Daddy's here. But was it? Was anything really okay when you were 3 months behind on rent, when every phone call might be a creditor, when your daughter's asthma medication cost more than you made in a week of driving rich people to places you'd never belong? Evan checked his watch. 9:47 a.m. The Ashford Cross wedding was scheduled for 11. He was early, which meant sitting in this parking garage beneath the Plaza Hotel, listening to the engine tick as it cooled, trying not to think about the electricity bill sitting unopened on his kitchen counter. The job had come through Marcus, his dispatcher, with a warning attached. High profile. Don't screw this up. The bride's family owns half of Manhattan. Evan didn't care who owned what. A fair was a fair. He'd learned long ago that money didn't make people better, just louder. His phone buzzed. A text from his neighbor, Mrs. Chen. Sophie's fine. We're making pancakes. Take your time. He let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Sophie. 6 years old, with her mother's dark curls and a smile that could break his heart and put it back together in the same moment. She was the only thing that mattered. The only thing that had mattered since the accident that took Jennifer 3 years ago. Evan closed his eyes, just for a second, just to reset. Then the garage elevator chimed and his workday began. The wedding coordinator came first, a woman in a headset and a panic-stricken expression, barking orders into her phone while gesturing wildly at a team of assistants hauling flower arrangements the size of small trees. "You're the driver?" she snapped at Evan. "Yes, ma'am." "The bride will need the car at 10:30 for photos at the cathedral. You'll wait at the south entrance. Do not leave the vehicle. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not—" She paused, really looking at him for the first time. "Do you own a suit that isn't from 2015? Evan glanced down at his dark suit, the same one he'd worn to Jennifer's funeral, to every job interview that went nowhere, to Sophie's kindergarten graduation. "It's clean." The coordinator's expression said everything her mouth didn't. "Fine. Just stay invisible." He nodded. Staying invisible was something he'd perfected. The next 2 hours were a blur of controlled chaos, florists, photographers. A cake so tall it required its own security escort. Evan watched it all from his post by the car, a silent observer to a world that spent more on centerpieces than he'd make all year. At 10:28, the coordinator's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Bride's on her way down. Look alive." Evan straightened, opened the rear door, positioned himself at attention. The elevator opened, and Lena Cross stepped out. Even Evan, who'd trained himself not to notice, couldn't help but stare. The dress was something out of a fairy tale, layers of white silk and lace that caught the garage's fluorescent lights and transformed them into something almost magical. Her dark hair was swept up in an intricate design that probably cost more than his car. Diamonds at her throat caught fire with every breath, but it was her face that stopped him. She was crying, not delicate, photogenic tears, real crying, the kind that came from somewhere deep and desperate. The kind that didn't care about mascara or image or the 200 guests waiting at St. Patrick's Cathedral. The coordinator swooped in immediately. "Ms. Cross, we need to go. The photographer is waiting, and—" "Get away from me." Lena's voice was quiet, but it cut like glass. "All of you, just get away." The coordinator froze. "But the schedule? I don't care about the schedule." Evan watched the woman's face cycle through shock, confusion, and then calculation. "I'll give you a moment," she said carefully, backing away. "But we really do need to leave in 5 minutes." The entourage retreated like a tide, leaving Lena standing alone beside the car in her wedding dress, crying in a parking garage. Evan knew he should stay invisible, should keep his eyes forward, his mouth shut, his presence minimal. But something in the way she stood there, shoulders shaking, hands clenched in all that expensive silk, reminded him of Sophie after a nightmare, alone and trying so hard to be brave. "Ma'am?" His voice was gentle. "Are you all right?" Lena's head snapped up. For the first time, she seemed to actually see him. Her eyes were red, makeup smudged, and filled with something that looked like drowning. "Do I look all right?" The words came out sharp, defensive. "No," Evan said honestly. "You look like someone who needs to not be here." The honesty seemed to surprise her. She stared at him, this quiet driver in his out-of-date suit, and something shifted in her expression. "I just found out," she said, and her voice cracked. "My fiancé, Marcus Ashford, the man I'm supposed to marry and—" She checked the diamond watch on her wrist. 73 minutes. "I just found out he's been lying to me for 2 years." Evan said nothing. Sometimes silence was the kindest response. "My assistant found the messages." Lena laughed, but it was a broken sound. Text messages to his lawyer, to his friends, planning how to maximize the prenup, strategizing how to manage me after the wedding. He called me an investment, said marrying me was like buying stock in the Cross Empire. "I'm sorry," Evan said quietly. "Everyone's sorry." Lena wiped at her face with the back of her hand, smearing expensive foundation. "My mother's sorry it came out today instead of after the wedding. My publicist is sorry about the optics. My father's sorry he didn't vet Marcus better. But nobody's asked me what I want to do." "What do you want to do?" The question seemed to stun her. I don't know. Run. Disappear. Get in this car and just drive until none of this is real anymore." Evan looked at her, really looked at her, past the dress, the diamonds, the famous last name, and he saw what he'd seen in the mirror every morning for 3 years. Someone trapped in a life they didn't choose, trying to figure out how to breathe. He made a decision. "Then get in." Lena blinked. "What? You want to leave? Get in the car. I'll drive." "I can't just. There are 200 people waiting for me. There are photographers and the reception, and there's also a man who sees you as an investment." Evan's voice was calm but firm. "A man who lied to you for 2 years. You really want to walk down that aisle?" Lena's breath caught. "They'll destroy me if I run. The headlines, the gossip, the shareholders. They'll destroy you anyway if you stay," Evan said. "At least this way, you get to choose." For a long moment, Lena just stood there, this billionaire heiress in a wedding dress in a parking garage, staring at a driver she'd met 3 minutes ago. Then she got in the car. Evan closed the door, walked around to the driver's seat, and started the engine. His phone immediately exploded with calls. The coordinator, the wedding planner, numbers he didn't recognize. He put it on silent, shifted into drive, and pulled out of the garage. "Where do you want to go?" he asked, merging into traffic. Lena was staring out the window, watching Manhattan slide past. "I don't know. I don't have anywhere. Everywhere I go, I'm Lena Cross, daughter of Richard Cross, heiress to the Cross Industries fortune. I don't have anywhere I can just be." Evan drove in silence for a moment, thinking. Then he made another decision, one that would change everything. "I know a place," he said. 20 minutes later, they pulled up outside a small diner in Queens. Lena stared at it through the window. "Rosie's Kitchen," the neon sign said. Half the letters burned out. It was the kind of place that served breakfast all day and didn't care what you wore or who your father was. "This is your sanctuary?" Lena asked, and for the first time there was something other than pain in her voice, almost amusement. "Best coffee in the city," Evan said, "and nobody here watches the society pages." "I'm wearing a wedding dress. People have worn stranger things to Rosie's." Despite everything, Lena laughed. It was a real laugh, startled and genuine. Okay, let's do it." Evan opened her door. Lena stepped out onto the cracked sidewalk in thousands of dollars of haute couture, and every person on the street stopped to stare. "Smile," Evan said quietly. "Act like you meant to do it." So Lena lifted her chin, grabbed a handful of her dress, and walked into Rosie's kitchen like she owned the place. The bell above the door chimed. Conversation stopped. Every head turned. Rosie herself, a woman in her 60s with hands roughened by 40 years of dishwashing, looked up from the counter and didn't miss a beat. "Booth or counter, honey?" "Booth," Lena said, her voice only slightly shaky. "Coffee?" "Please." Rosie grabbed 2 mugs. "Cream and sugars on the table. Evan, the usual?" "Yes, ma'am." They slid into a booth in the back, and slowly, miraculously, the diner returned to its normal rhythm. Conversations resumed. Forks scraped plates. Someone fed quarters into the jukebox, and Patsy Cline started singing about falling to pieces. Lena looked around the diner like she was seeing the world for the first time. "They don't know who I am." "They don't care who you are," Evan corrected gently. Rosie returned with coffee and menus. "What happened, sweetheart? Groom get cold feet?" "Something like that," Lena said. Rosie patted her hand. "His loss. You want my advice? Eat some pie, cry if you need to, and remember that tomorrow's a new day." She winked. "Also, that dress is gorgeous, but you're going to get marinara on it if you order the spaghetti." When she walked away, Lena stared down at the laminated menu. "I was supposed to be cutting my wedding cake right now." "You want to go back?" Evan asked. "No." The answer came immediately. "No, I don't know what I'm supposed to do instead." "What do you want to do?" "Stop asking me that," Lena said, but there was no heat in it. "Nobody's ever asked me what I want. There's always been a plan. School, internship, executive position, strategic marriage. I've been following a blueprint my whole life." "So tear up the blueprint." Lena looked at him, the stranger who'd driven her away from her own wedding, who'd brought her to a diner in Queens, who asked questions nobody else thought to ask. "Who are you?" "Evan Hale, single father, part-time driver, full-time disaster." He smiled slightly. "Nice to meet you, Lena Cross." "Lena," she said. "Just Lena." "Just Lena," he repeated. They ordered pie for her, breakfast for him, and as they ate, something strange happened. Lena started talking, really talking, about the pressure of being Richard Cross's only child, about the loneliness of growing up with nannies instead of parents, about Marcus Ashford, who'd seemed like the perfect solution to everyone else's plans. "I thought he loved me," she said quietly. "Is that stupid? With everything I know about business, about people, about how the world works, I actually believed someone could love me for me." "That's not stupid," Evan said. "That's human. You lost someone." It wasn't a question. Lena was looking at the worn gold band Evan still wore on his left hand. "My wife, Jennifer, 3 years ago, car accident." "I'm sorry." "Everyone's sorry?" Evan echoed her earlier words with a gentle smile. "But she gave me the best thing in my life, my daughter, Sophie. She's 6, obsessed with dinosaurs, allergic to bee stings, and convinced she's going to be an astronaut. You talk about her like she's your whole world." "She is." Evan's voice was simple, certain. "Everything else is just noise." Lena was quiet for a moment. "That must be nice, knowing exactly what matters." "It is," Evan said, but it took losing everything else to figure it out. Before Lena could respond, Evan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression changed. "What's wrong?" Lena asked. "It's my neighbor. Sophie's having trouble breathing. Her asthma." He was already standing, throwing bills on the table. "I'm sorry, I need to—" "Go," Lena said immediately. "Go, I'll get a cab." "In a wedding dress in Queens?" Evan shook his head. "You're coming with me." "Yeah." Evan's apartment was a 4th-floor walk-up in Astoria, the kind of building where the elevator had been broken since the 90s and the radiators clanged all winter. He took the stairs 2 at a time, Lena following in her wedding dress, both of them breathing hard by the 3rd floor. Mrs. Chen was waiting at the door, Sophie in her arms. The little girl's breathing was fast and shallow, her lips tinged blue at the edges. Her inhaler's not working, Mrs. Chen said, worry etched in every line of her face. I was about to call 911. I've got her. Evan took Sophie gently, his voice calm despite the fear in his eyes. Hey, sweet pea. Daddy's here. We're going to do the breathing exercises, remember? Like we practiced? He carried her inside and Lena followed, suddenly very aware that she was intruding on an intimate, terrifying moment. The apartment was small, one bedroom probably, a living room with a couch that had seen better days. But it was clean, and everywhere Lena looked, she saw Sophie, drawings on the refrigerator, a pile of library books about space, a toy dinosaur sitting on the kitchen counter like it belonged there. Evan sat on the couch with Sophie, holding her carefully, breathing with her. In through your nose, out through your mouth. That's it, baby. You're doing great. Lena stood frozen in the doorway, this heiress in a wedding dress, watching a father save his daughter's life with nothing but patience and love. Slowly, Sophie's breathing evened out. The blue tinge faded. She opened her eyes, dark eyes, just like her father's, and looked up at Evan with complete trust. Better? He asked softly. Sophie nodded, then noticed Lena standing in the doorway. Her eyes went wide. Daddy, why is there a princess in our house? Despite everything, the fear, the adrenaline, the impossibility of the whole situation, Evan laughed. This is Lena. She's a friend. She's had a hard day. Sophie studied Lena with the serious intensity only 6-year-olds could manage. Did somebody make you sad? Yes, Lena said, her voice thick. Somebody did. You can stay here, Sophie announced. Daddy makes the best grilled cheese when people are sad, and we have extra pillows. Lena looked at Evan, who shrugged helplessly. She's not wrong about the grilled cheese. And somehow, impossibly, inexplicably, Lena found herself sitting on a worn couch in Queens, still wearing her wedding dress, eating grilled cheese sandwiches with a single father and his 6-year-old daughter while the entire city searched for her. Her phone had died hours ago. She'd left it in the car, along with her purse, her life, her carefully constructed identity. And sitting there, with Sophie chattering about her favorite dinosaurs and Evan listening with patient attention, Lena realized something terrifying. She didn't want to go back. Tell me about the T-Rex, Sophie demanded, pointing at a picture in one of her dinosaur books. The Tyrannosaurus Rex was one of the largest land predators to ever exist, Lena heard herself saying, slipping into the tone she used for board presentations. Then she stopped, looked at Sophie's expectant face, and tried again. It had teeth as big as bananas. Sophie's eyes went huge. Really? Really? And nobody knows if it had feathers or scales. I think it had feathers, Sophie said decisively. Pink ones. Pink? Lena smiled. Why pink? Because everyone thinks dinosaurs are scary, but maybe they were pretty too. Something about that simple statement hit Lena right in the chest. Maybe they were pretty too. Maybe things could be more than what everyone expected them to be. Evan emerged from the kitchen with 3 mugs of hot chocolate, the instant kind that came from packets. Nothing like the Belgian chocolate Lena was used to, and it was the best thing she'd ever tasted. Thank you, she said quietly. For today. For all of this. Evan settled next to Sophie, who immediately curled into his side. You helped me get through my wedding day. This seemed like the least I could do. I ran away from my wedding day. You survived it, Evan corrected. There's a difference. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, Sophie slowly drifting off to sleep against her father's shoulder. Outside, sirens wailed, and the city hummed with its endless energy, but inside this small apartment, the world felt quiet. Safe. I should go, Lena finally said. Face the music. Figure out what comes next. Where will you go? Lena thought about her penthouse apartment, the one her mother had decorated, the one that had never felt like home. Thought about her office at Cross Industries, where even her desk had been chosen by committee. Thought about Marcus, who was probably already spinning the story, making himself the victim. I don't know, she admitted, but I can't hide here forever. Why not? Sophie's sleepy voice startled them both. She was looking at Lena with half-closed eyes. You're nice. And you know about dinosaurs. And you didn't laugh when I showed you my drawings. Your drawings are beautiful, Lena said honestly. Then stay. Sophie said it like it was simple, like the world didn't exist outside these walls. Stay and have breakfast with us. Daddy makes the best pancakes. Lena looked at Evan, who looked as surprised as she felt. You don't have to. I want to, Lena interrupted. If that's okay. Evan studied her for a long moment, and Lena wondered what he saw. Not the heiress, not the brand, just a woman who was tired of running toward things she didn't want and ready to run toward something real. Okay, Evan said quietly. You can take the bedroom. Sophie and I will take the couch. I can't take your bed. Yes, you can. His voice was gentle but firm. You've had a hell of a day. Get some sleep. So Lena found herself in Evan Hale's bedroom, wearing borrowed sweatpants and a t-shirt that said, World's Best Dad, a Father's Day gift from Sophie, Evan had explained, lying in a bed that smelled like laundry detergent and honesty. Through the thin walls, she could hear Evan settling Sophie on the couch, his voice low and soothing as he read her a bedtime story. Something about a caterpillar and transformation and becoming something beautiful. Lena closed her eyes and, for the first time in years, felt something that might have been peace. Outside, Manhattan was losing its mind. Her disappearance had already hit social media. Hashtag runaway bride was trending. Marcus Ashford was giving interviews, his face a perfect mask of concern. Her mother was calling in favors. Her publicist was having a breakdown. But Lena Cross, for one night, didn't care. She fell asleep in a stranger's bed in borrowed clothes with the sound of a father's love drifting through the walls and dreamed of pink-feathered dinosaurs and roads that led somewhere new. Lena woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of laughter. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was. The bedroom was unfamiliar. Simple furniture, clean but worn, photos on the dresser of a little girl growing up, and one larger frame holding a picture of Evan with a woman who must have been Jennifer. They looked young and impossibly happy. Then yesterday came flooding back. The wedding, the betrayal, the parking garage, the diner, Sophie struggling to breathe. Stay and have breakfast with us. Lena sat up, running her hands through her hair. It was a disaster. The careful updo destroyed by sleep, her face probably marked with pillow creases. She looked nothing like Lena Cross, billionaire heiress. She looked like just Lena. She liked it. The bedroom door was cracked open, and through it she could hear Sophie's chatter. And then the Stegosaurus said, I don't care if you're a T-Rex, you can't have my pancakes. Evan's laugh was warm. Is that really how the story goes? It is now. Lena found them in the kitchen, Evan at the stove flipping pancakes, Sophie at the small table coloring in a dinosaur book, both of them still in pajamas, completely at ease in their morning routine. Good morning, Evan said, spotting her. Coffee? Please. He poured her a mug and Lena wrapped her hands around it, absorbing the warmth. I should check my phone, face reality. Your phone's charged, Evan nodded toward the counter. Fair warning, reality's going to be loud. He wasn't wrong. When Lena turned on her phone, it immediately erupted with notifications. Hundreds of missed calls. Thousands of texts, news alerts with her name in the headlines. Cross heiress vanishes on wedding day. Marcus Ashford speaks out. I'm devastated and confused. Where is Lena Cross? There were messages from her mother, her publicist, her lawyers, her friends, everyone except the one person whose message she might have wanted to see. But Marcus had been smart enough to stay silent on her personal phone, letting his public statements do the talking. Everything okay? Evan asked carefully. Define okay. Lena scrolled through her mother's increasingly frantic texts. My mother wants me to know I've embarrassed the family name. My publicist has drafted 3 different statements depending on whether I'm having a breakdown, being held hostage, or having an affair. And Marcus, she laughed, but it was bitter. Marcus is playing the concerned fiancé, worried about my mental state. What do you want to do? There it was again. That question, the one nobody else thought to ask. Lena looked at Sophie, who was watching her with wide, curious eyes. What would the Stegosaurus do? Sophie considered this very seriously. She would finish her pancakes first, because you can't fight T-Rexes on an empty stomach. Smart stegosaurus, Lena said. So they had breakfast. Pancakes with too much syrup, bacon that was slightly burned, orange juice from concentrate. It was perfect. Afterward, while Evan washed dishes and Sophie built a blanket fort in the living room, Lena made the call she'd been dreading. Her mother answered on the first ring. "Lena Elizabeth Cross, where the hell are you?" "I'm safe, Mother." "Safe? Do you have any idea what you've done? The scandal, the embarrassment, the shareholders?" "Marcus was using me," Lena said quietly. "He was using me for my money, and everyone knew except me." Her mother was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, tired. "I know." "You knew?" "I suspected. Your father, we both had concerns, but the merger with Ashford Industries was too valuable, and you seemed happy enough, and—" She sighed. "We made a mistake. I made a mistake." It was possibly the first time Lena had ever heard her mother admit to being wrong. "I need time," Lena said. "Time to figure out what I want, who I am without all the plans and expectations and strategies." "How much time?" "I don't know. The board meeting is Monday. If you're not there, if you don't make a statement, they'll see it as weakness. You'll lose your position, Lena. Everything you've worked for." Lena looked at the blanket fort Sophie had constructed, at Evan drying dishes with a towel that had seen better days, at this small apartment that somehow felt more like home than her penthouse ever had. "Maybe," she said slowly, "I've been working for the wrong things." Her mother's sharp intake of breath was loud through the phone. "Don't be naive. You can't just walk away from your responsibilities because of one bad relationship." "I'm not walking away. I'm taking a breath." Lena's voice was firm. "I'll be at the board meeting Monday. I'll make whatever statement you need, but right now I need to not be Lena Cross, heiress. I need to just be Lena." And where exactly are you planning to just be Lena?" Lena looked at Evan, who was very deliberately not listening. "With friends." After she hung up, Evan handed her a dish towel. "Dry?" "I don't know how." He smiled. "I'll teach you." So Lena Cross, whose net worth was larger than some country's GDP, learned how to dry dishes in a kitchen smaller than her walk-in closet. And she learned other things too, as that strange, suspended day unfolded. She learned that Sophie was afraid of the dark, but too brave to admit it. That Evan had been working 3 jobs before Jennifer died, trying to build a future, and now worked 2 just to tread water. That Sophie's asthma medication cost $400 a month even with insurance, and that Evan sometimes skipped meals to afford it. She learned that happiness didn't require a trust fund or a society page mention or a 5-year plan. Sometimes it just required playing Go Fish with a 6-year-old who cheated shamelessly or watching a father braid his daughter's hair with the focused intensity of someone defusing a bomb or eating leftover Chinese food straight from the container because all the plates were dirty and nobody cared. "Can I ask you something?" Lena said that evening after Sophie had fallen asleep mid-cartoon, curled up between them on the couch. "Sure," Evan said. "Why did you help me yesterday? You didn't know me. You risked your job, probably broke a dozen contracts. Why?" Evan was quiet for a moment, absently running his fingers through Sophie's hair. "Because I know what it's like to be trapped. After Jennifer died, everyone had a plan for me. How to grieve, how to raise Sophie, how to move on. Everyone knew better than I did what I needed." He looked at Lena. "Nobody asked what I wanted, and when someone finally did, when someone gave me permission to just stop and breathe, it saved my life." "Who was it? Who asked?" "Jennifer's sister, Sarah. She showed up 3 months after the funeral, found me in the middle of a panic attack and said, 'What do you need right now?' Not what I should do, not what was best for Sophie, just what did I need?" Evan smiled slightly. "I said I needed to scream. So we went to this parking garage and screamed until our throats hurt. Best therapy I ever had." Lena laughed, trying to imagine it. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for asking what I needed. Thank you for being brave enough to answer." They sat in comfortable silence, the TV murmuring softly, Sophie's breathing steady and peaceful between them. Outside, the city continued its relentless pace. But here, in this moment, time felt different, softer. I have to go back, Lena said eventually. To my life, my company, the mess I made. I can't hide here forever. I know. But I don't want to go back to who I was. The person who would have married Marcus just because it made sense on paper. The person who valued stock prices over her own heart. Then don't, Evan said simply. It's not that easy. Isn't it? He looked at her, and in his eyes, Lena saw a challenge. You walked away from a wedding in front of 200 people. You've spent the past 36 hours living like a normal person. You know what you don't want. Now figure out what you do want. And if what I want doesn't make sense, if it's not strategic or practical or what everyone expects, Evan gestured to Sophie, sleeping peacefully. I'm a widowed single father barely making rent, raising a daughter on my own. None of this makes sense. I do it anyway because it's what matters. Lena looked at this man, this stranger who'd become something else in the span of 2 days, and felt something shift in her chest, a recognition, a possibility. What if I want something impossible? She asked quietly. Like what? Like this feeling, this life where pancakes matter more than stock prices and the most important meeting of the day is reading bedtime stories. Evan met her eyes, and for a moment, neither of them looked away. The air between them felt charged with all the things they weren't saying. Then Sophie stirred, mumbling something about purple triceratops, and the moment passed. It's getting late, Evan said, his voice careful. I should get her to bed. He lifted Sophie gently, carrying her toward the bedroom they shared. At the doorway, he paused. Lena, for what it's worth, impossible things happen every day. You just have to be brave enough to believe in them. After he left, Lena sat alone on the couch, her phone dark on the coffee table, the weight of Monday's board meeting pressing down on her like gravity. She had 48 hours to figure out who she wanted to be. 48 hours to decide if she was brave enough to build a life that didn't make sense on paper but felt right in every other way. Outside, sirens wailed. The city never slept, never stopped, never gave anyone permission to pause. But here, in this small apartment in Astoria, Lena Cross closed her eyes and gave herself permission to imagine a different kind of future. One where impossible things were just waiting to happen. Monday morning arrived like a reckoning. Lena woke in Evan's bed for the third time, but this morning felt different. The borrowed peace of the weekend was over. Reality waited outside with sharp teeth and cameras. She found Evan already awake in the kitchen, coffee brewing, his expression troubled as he scrolled through his phone. They're camped outside my building, he said without preamble. Photographers, reporters. Someone must have tracked the car here. Lena's stomach dropped. I'm so sorry. I should have left yesterday. I should have... Sophie saw them this morning when she looked out the window. Asked me why all those people were taking pictures of our building. His voice was carefully controlled, but Lena could hear the strain beneath it. I told her they were making a movie. Evan, it's fine. He wasn't looking at her. I'll call Marcus, have him arrange another car, bring you something to wear. You can't go to your board meeting in my old sweatpants. The distance in his voice hurt more than it should have. 3 days ago, they'd been strangers. Now the thought of that careful distance felt like losing something she'd just found. I don't want to go, Lena said quietly. Evan finally looked at her. But you're going to. But I'm going to, she echoed. Sophie emerged from the bedroom, rubbing her eyes, her hair a wild tangle. She stopped when she saw them both, sensing the tension even through her sleepiness. Are you leaving? She asked Lena directly. I have to go to work, sweetheart. But you'll come back. There was something in Sophie's voice, a fragility that spoke to too many people already leaving her life. Lena knelt down to Sophie's level, meeting those dark eyes so like her father's. I don't know, she said honestly, but I promise I'll try. That's what Mommy said, Sophie whispered. Before the accident, she said she'd try to come back. The words hung in the air like broken glass. Evan moved quickly, gathering Sophie into his arms. That's different, Sweet Pea. Lena's just going to work. She's not... His voice cracked slightly. It's different. But Lena could see it in his face now. The fear she'd missed before. The terror of Sophie getting attached to someone who would inevitably leave. who belonged to a world where people like him were invisible. "I should go," Lena said, standing, "before the crowd gets worse." 20 minutes later, she was in the back of a company car, one of her own fleet. The irony wasn't lost on her, wearing clothes her assistant had brought from her penthouse. Designer suit, perfect makeup, every hair in place. She looked like Lena Cross again. She hated it. Through the tinted window, she caught a glimpse of Evan standing on his building steps, Sophie on his hip, watching the car pull away. He raised one hand in a small wave. Lena didn't wave back. She couldn't, because if she acknowledged the goodbye, she'd have to acknowledge what she was leaving behind. The board meeting was a massacre dressed up as corporate procedure. Lena sat at the head of the long marble table in the Cross Industries headquarters, surrounded by men in expensive suits who'd known her since she was a child. Men who'd watched her grow up, praised her business acumen, groomed her to take over the empire her grandfather had built. Now they looked at her like she was a liability. "The stock dropped 3 points when news of the canceled wedding broke," Thomas Morrison, the CFO, said flatly. 3 points. "Do you understand what that represents in actual dollars?" "I understand math, Thomas." "Do you understand optics?" her mother interjected. Richard Cross sat beside his wife, silent for once, letting her do the talking. "Because right now, the narrative is that you had a breakdown, that you're unstable, unreliable." "The narrative," Lena said slowly, "is that I discovered my fiancé was using me and I chose not to marry him. Most people would call that self-respect." "Most people don't have shareholders," another board member said. "Most people don't have a fiancé who referred to them as a strategic investment either," Lena shot back. "But here we are." Her mother's expression tightened. "We've prepared a statement. You'll announce that the wedding was postponed due to personal differences, that you and Marcus are working through issues privately, and that you remain committed to your role at Cross Industries." "No." The single word fell into the room like a stone into still water. "Excuse me?" her mother said. "No. I'm not lying to protect Marcus Ashford's reputation. I'm not pretending this was mutual, and I'm not letting this company use my personal life as a damage control exercise." "Lena," her father finally spoke, his voice tired. "Be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. For the first time in my life, actually." Lena stood, placing her hands flat on the table. "I'll make a statement. I'll address the shareholders. I'll do my job. But I'm done pretending to be someone I'm not for the sake of stock prices." "And who exactly are you?" Thomas asked, his voice dripping with condescension. "Because the woman we knew wouldn't have run away from her own wedding in a hired car." "The woman you knew," Lena said quietly, "was so busy being who everyone expected her to be that she almost married a man who saw her as a quarterly earnings report." She gathered her materials, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "I'll have my own statement drafted by end of day. The shareholders' meeting is Wednesday. I'll be there." She walked out before anyone could respond, her heels clicking against marble, her spine straight, her hands shaking. In the elevator, alone for 37 floors, Lena finally let herself breathe. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Saw the news. Sophie wants to know if you still like dinosaurs. Evan." Despite everything, Lena smiled. She typed back, "Especially the ones with pink feathers." 3 dots appeared, then, "She says you can come back any time, no pressure, and what do you say?" The dots appeared and disappeared twice before his response came. "I say Sophie's usually right about people." Lena stared at those words for the rest of the elevator ride, something warm and terrifying blooming in her chest. The next 48 hours were a controlled hurricane. Lena's publicist, a woman named Caroline, who'd been managing the Cross family image for 2 decades, nearly had an aneurysm when Lena presented her drafted statement. "You can't say this," Caroline said, pacing her office. "You're admitting weakness, admitting you were fooled." "I'm admitting I'm human." "Humans don't run multi-billion-dollar companies." "Then maybe," Lena said calmly, "we should change that expectation." The statement went out Tuesday evening, carefully timed for maximum impact. "I ended my engagement to Marcus Ashford after discovering our relationship was based on financial strategy rather than genuine partnership. I take full responsibility for not seeing this sooner. I'm grateful to the person who helped me find the courage to walk away. And I'm using this moment to reevaluate not just my personal life, but my priorities as a leader. I look forward to addressing our shareholders Wednesday with a renewed vision for Cross Industries' future. The internet exploded. Half the comments were supportive. Women sharing their own stories of narrow escapes, of choosing themselves over expectations. The other half were vicious, calling her weak, unstable, emotional, all the words always reserved for women who dared to be human in public. Marcus Ashford released his own statement an hour later, playing the wounded lover with surgical precision. But Lena noticed his lawyers had been very careful with the wording. No lawsuits, no real denial, just enough plausible deniability to protect himself. She should have felt angry. Instead, she felt free. Wednesday morning, Lena stood backstage at the shareholders' meeting, listening to the murmur of hundreds of voices beyond the curtain. Investors, board members, financial analysts. Every person in that room measured her worth in quarterly returns. 5 minutes, Ms. Cross, an assistant said. Lena nodded, smoothing down her suit. Navy blue, perfectly tailored, armor disguised as fashion. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Evan. Sophie wanted me to tell you that T-Rexes are scary, but they're not as scary as board meetings. Her words, not mine. Tell her she's right. You've got this. Just remember, they need you more than you need them. Lena stared at that message. In her world, people didn't say things like that. In her world, everyone pretended the power dynamics were equal when they never were. But Evan was right. These shareholders needed her vision, her leadership, her name. What did she need from them? The answer came quickly. Nothing. Not anymore. Ms. Cross, the assistant prompted. Lena walked onto that stage like she was walking into battle. The presentation hall fell silent as she took the podium. Hundreds of faces stared back at her, waiting for her to stumble, to apologize, to diminish herself. Instead, she smiled. Thank you for being here, she began. I know many of you have questions about recent events, so let me be clear. I ended my engagement because I discovered it was built on deception. Some of you will see that as a personal failing. I see it as the most successful business decision I've made in years. A ripple went through the crowd. Confused murmurs. This wasn't the script. Because here's what I learned, Lena continued, her voice steady. I learned that I'd been so focused on quarterly earnings and market share that I'd forgotten to ask the most basic question. What are we actually building here? What's the point of an empire if it costs you everything that makes you human? Ms. Cross, Thomas Morrison tried to interrupt from the front row. I'm not finished. Her voice was sharp enough to cut. Cross Industries was built by my grandfather on a simple principle. Build things that matter. Somewhere along the way, we forgot that. We started measuring success only in stock prices and profit margins. We forgot that our employees are people with families and dreams and struggles. We forgot that our decisions impact real lives. She pulled up a slide. Not the financial projections they were expecting, but a photograph. A single father reading to his daughter on a worn couch. This is Evan Hale, Lena said. He's a driver for one of our contracted services. He works 70 hours a week and still can't afford his daughter's asthma medication. His wife died 3 years ago, and he's raising Sophie alone. He's brilliant, hardworking, and dedicated, and our current business model treats him as disposable. The room was utterly silent now. I'm proposing a new initiative, Lena said, the Cross Foundation for Working Families. We're going to start by raising wages for all contracted employees to living wage standards. We're going to provide comprehensive health care that actually covers the medications people need. We're going to offer childcare subsidies and career development programs. And yes, this will cost money. It will impact our margins. And I don't care. You can't be serious, someone shouted from the back. I'm completely serious, because I've spent the last week living in the real world, and I've learned more about effective leadership in Evan Hale's one-bedroom apartment than I learned in 10 years of business school. Lena's eyes swept the room. You want to vote me out? Go ahead. But you'll have to explain to the world why Cross Industries chose profit over people. In this economy, in this climate, with that message. Good luck with your stock prices then. She let that sink in. Or, she continued, her voice softer now, you can trust me. Trust that doing the right thing is also good business. That companies with values attract better talent, create more innovation, and build longer-lasting success. That maybe, just maybe, my grandfather was right. Building things that matter is the only business model that truly lasts. Lena stepped back from the podium. Questions? The room erupted. 3 hours later, Lena sat in her office, exhausted and exhilarated. The vote had been closer than she'd liked. Several board members had tried to force her resignation, but she'd won. Barely. The Cross Foundation would launch within the month. Her mother appeared in the doorway without knocking, her expression unreadable. That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen, she said slowly, or the most foolish. Maybe both, Lena said. Her mother walked to the window, looking out over the Manhattan skyline. Your grandfather would have been proud. Your father's terrified. The board thinks you've lost your mind. She turned back to Lena. Think you might have just saved this company's soul. I thought you said companies don't have souls. I was wrong about a lot of things. Her mother's voice was softer than Lena had heard in years, including Marcus. I should have trusted your judgment. I should have asked what you wanted instead of what made strategic sense. You're not the only one who made that mistake, Lena said quietly. They stood in silence for a moment, this mother and daughter who'd spent years speaking different languages, finally finding common ground. This driver, her mother said carefully, Evan Hale, is he the reason you're doing this? He's part of it. Sophie too, but mostly, Lena paused, choosing her words carefully. Mostly I'm doing this because I looked at my life and realized I didn't recognize myself anymore. And I'm terrified that if I don't change now, I never will. Her mother nodded slowly. Your father and I are hosting the Spring Gala next month, the annual fundraiser for the Children's Hospital. I'd like you to come, and I'd like you to bring a guest. Mother, someone who reminds you who you are, her mother continued. Someone who helped you find the courage to be honest. Someone who matters to you. Lena's heart stuttered. We're not. I didn't ask what you are. I asked if he matters. Her mother smiled slightly. Bring him, let him see your world. Let your world see him. See what happens. After her mother left, Lena sat alone in her office as the city lights began to glow below her. She pulled out her phone, staring at Evan's last message. She could go back to her old life. Comfortable, predictable, lonely. Or she could take another leap. Her fingers moved before she could overthink it. What are you doing Saturday night? The response came quickly. Probably watching Jurassic Park for the 40th time. Why? How would you and Sophie like to go to a gala? Black tie, fancy dinner, extremely boring speeches. Sounds terrible. It will be. But maybe less terrible together? The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. Finally, Sophie doesn't have anything to wear to a gala. I'll handle it. I don't have anything to wear to a gala either. I'll handle that too. Another long pause, then, why are you doing this? Lena typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on the truth. Because sitting in that apartment eating grilled cheese with you and Sophie felt more real than anything in my life has felt in years, and I'm not ready to let that go. Even if it's complicated, especially because it's complicated. Lena, I'm a driver who can barely make rent. You're a billionaire who just revolutionized her company on live television. This is more than complicated, so we'll figure it out. Just like that? Just like that. The response took longer this time. Lena imagined Evan in his small apartment, Sophie probably asleep on the couch, trying to process what she was asking. Finally, okay, but if this goes badly, you owe Sophie a lifetime supply of dinosaur books. Deal. Lena set down her phone, her hand shaking slightly. She'd just invited a working single father to one of Manhattan's most exclusive events. The society pages would have a field day. Her mother's friends would gossip for months. Every photographer in the city would be waiting to see what the runaway bride's next chapter looked like. Good. Let them look. Let them judge. Let them see exactly who Lena Cross was choosing to become. The next few days blurred together in a whirlwind of foundation planning, media interviews, and damage control. Marcus Ashford tried to arrange a meeting, through his lawyers, always through his lawyers, but Lena declined. That chapter was closed. She visited Evan and Sophie twice more that week, each time feeling the strange displacement of moving between worlds. Her penthouse felt like a museum. Evan's apartment felt like home. "Are you sure about this gala thing?" Evan asked Thursday evening, while Sophie was distracted by a new dinosaur documentary. "It's not too late to back out." "Are you having second thoughts?" "I'm having all the thoughts." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I just don't want Sophie to get hurt if this, whatever this is, doesn't work out." "What about you?" Lena asked quietly. "Do you want to get hurt?" "I'm a widower raising a 6-year-old alone. I'm already hurt. The question is whether I'm brave enough to risk it again." Lena moved closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "For what it's worth, I'm terrified too." "Yeah?" "Absolutely terrified. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm making this up as I go along." "That's the most honest thing anyone's said to me in years," Evan murmured. They stood there in his tiny kitchen, the space between them charged with possibility and fear and something that felt dangerously like hope. Sophie's voice broke the moment. "Dad, the T-Rex is fighting the Spinosaurus. You have to see this." Evan stepped back, the spell broken. "Duty calls." "The dinosaurs wait for no one," Lena agreed. But later, after Sophie had fallen asleep and Lena was preparing to leave, Evan caught her hand at the door. "Thank you," he said softly, "for seeing us, for not treating Sophie like a complication or me like a project, for just—" He squeezed her hand gently. "Thank you." Lena squeezed back. "Thank you for teaching me what really matters." Saturday arrived with the weight of expectations. Lena sent a car for Evan and Sophie at 4, early enough for Sophie's fitting and for Evan to get comfortable in the tuxedo Lena had arranged. She met them at a boutique her mother frequented where the owner had been briefed to treat them like royalty. Sophie's eyes went wide as she walked into the shop. "Is this a castle?" "Close enough," Lena said, kneeling down. "Want to pick out a dress?" What followed was an hour of pure joy. Sophie tried on what felt like every dress in the store, twirling in front of mirrors, declaring each one either too princessy or not princessy enough. She finally settled on a deep purple gown with subtle sparkles, insisting it was stegosaurus-colored. Watching Evan's face as his daughter spun in that dress, seeing his eyes grow bright with tears he tried to hide, that was worth every complicated moment to come. "She's beautiful," he whispered to Lena. "She is, and so are you." Evan glanced down at his tuxedo, clearly uncomfortable. "I feel like I'm playing dress-up." "You look like you belong anywhere you choose to be," Lena corrected. "The question is whether you choose to be here." His eyes met hers. "I'm here, aren't I?" The gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, because Lena's mother believed that if you were going to ask wealthy people for money, you should at least surround them with beauty. As their car pulled up to the red carpet, yes, there was literally a red carpet, Sophie pressed her face to the window. "There are so many cameras." "There are," Lena agreed, her stomach tight with nerves. "They're going to take pictures of us, lots of pictures, and some people might ask questions. You don't have to answer anything you don't want to." "Can I tell them about dinosaurs?" Despite her anxiety, Lena laughed. "Absolutely." Evan reached across the seat, finding her hand. "Ready?" "No, you?" "Not even a little bit." "Perfect. Let's go." The moment Lena stepped out of the car with Evan and Sophie, the cameras exploded into a frenzy of flashing lights. "Lena, who's your date?" "Is this the man you left Marcus for?" "What's the little girl's name?" Evan's hand tightened on hers, but his face remained calm. Sophie, bless her 6-year-old fearlessness, waved at the cameras like she was meeting new friends. They made it halfway up the carpet before the first real confrontation. "Lena!" A reporter thrust a microphone at her. "Are you in a relationship with your driver?" Before Lena could answer, Evan spoke. "I prefer single father and decent human being, but sure, driver works too." The reporter blinked, caught off guard by his directness. "And this must be Sophie," another reporter said, crouching down. "What do you think of all this?" Sophie considered the question seriously. "I think the museum probably has dinosaur bones, and that's the most important thing here." Several photographers laughed. One called out, "She's got her priorities straight." They made it inside, and Lena felt Evan's tension slightly ease as they escaped the cameras. "That was awful," Lena supplied. I was going to say surreal, but awful works, too. The museum's great hall had been transformed into something from a fairy tale. Flowers everywhere, crystal chandeliers, tables draped in white and gold. Manhattan's elite mingled in their finest clothes, champagne glasses in hand, air kissing and networking and performing the delicate dance of high society. Lena watched Evan take it all in, trying to see it through his eyes. The excess, the performance, the careful calculations behind every smile. "You grew up with this," he said quietly. "I did. Does it change how you see me?" "It makes me understand you better," he corrected. "Why you ran. Why you needed something real." "Lena!" Her mother appeared, resplendent in silver, her smile genuine as she approached. "You made it, and this must be Evan Hale," he said, extending his hand, "and my daughter, Sophie." Lena's mother shook his hand, then knelt down to Sophie's level. "Sophie, I'm Eleanor Cross. That's a beautiful dress." "Thank you." Lena helped me pick it. "It's Stegosaurus purple." "Is it?" Eleanor's smile widened. "That's the best kind of purple. Would you like to see something special? The museum has a dinosaur exhibit upstairs." Sophie's eyes went huge. "Really?" "Really. I'll have someone give you a private tour if your father agrees." Evan looked torn between gratitude and uncertainty. "That's very generous, but there's a staff member I trust completely. Former teacher, grandmother of 5. Sophie will be perfectly safe, and you'll have a pager if she needs you." Eleanor's expression was kind. "You both deserve an evening to breathe." After a moment, Evan nodded. "Okay. Sophie, you listen to everything the nice museum person tells you. Understand?" "I promise. Can I go now?" 5 minutes later, Sophie was being escorted away by a gentle older woman, chattering excitedly about T-Rexes and Triceratops, leaving Evan and Lena suddenly alone in a ballroom full of strangers. "Your mother's terrifying," Evan said. "I know, but she likes you. How can you tell?" "She offered to send Sophie somewhere fun instead of just tolerating her presence. In my mother's world, that's basically a declaration of love." They found their assigned table, mercifully far from Marcus Ashford's family and close to several Cross Industries board members. Lena made introductions, watching carefully as Evan shook hands with men who'd probably never spoken to a driver outside of giving directions. To his credit, Evan held his own. When Thomas Morrison asked condescendingly what he did for a living, Evan smiled and said, "I drive people who are too important to drive themselves. It gives you an interesting perspective on power." Thomas blinked, uncertain whether he'd been insulted. Dinner was served, 7 courses of food that looked like art and tasted like ambition. Between the second and third courses, Evan leaned close to Lena. "I keep expecting someone to realize I don't belong here and escort me out." "Well, you belong anywhere I say you belong," Lena said firmly, "and I say you belong right here." But she could feel the eyes on them, the whispers, the phones being discreetly pulled out to text friends about Lena Cross's shocking choice of companion. Let them stare. Let them whisper. She'd stopped caring about their opinions the moment she stepped out of that wedding dress. The evening progressed through speeches and auctions and carefully choreographed entertainment. Lena's mother made a beautiful appeal for the children's hospital, and when the donation totals were announced, record-breaking numbers, Lena felt genuinely proud. Then the dancing started, and Evan looked genuinely panicked. "I should mention," he said, "I don't really know how to do this kind of dancing." "Neither do half the people here. They're just better at faking it." Lena stood, extending her hand. "Come on, I'll teach you." On the dance floor, surrounded by couples who'd been waltzing since childhood, Evan held Lena carefully, like she was something precious that might break. "You're doing fine," she murmured. "I'm counting in my head and trying not to step on your feet." "Then you're doing better than my father, who just trampled my mother during their dance." Evan laughed, and some of his tension eased. They swayed together, not quite in rhythm with the orchestra, not quite synchronized with the other dancers, but together nonetheless. "Can I ask you something?" Evan said after a moment. "Anything." "What are we doing here?" "Really?" Lena looked up at him, this man who'd helped her escape, who'd shared his home, who'd taught her that happiness didn't require a trust fund. "Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. All I know is that being with you and Sophie feels right in a way nothing has felt right in years. And I'm tired of ignoring things that feel right just because they're complicated. What if I can't give you this? Evan gestured to the opulent ballroom. What if grilled cheese and dinosaur documentaries are the best I have to offer? Then I'll be the luckiest woman in this room, Lena said simply. Evan's eyes searched hers, looking for doubt, for performance, for anything false. He must have found only truth because he pulled her slightly closer. This is crazy, he murmured. Completely. People are staring. Let them. Your world and mine, they don't fit together. Then maybe, Lena said, we build a new world that fits us both. Before Evan could respond, a voice cut through their moment like a knife. How touching. They turned to find Marcus Ashford standing behind them, champagne in hand, his smile sharp enough to draw blood. Lena felt Evan tense beside her, his hand still resting at her waist, but his entire body had gone rigid. She forced herself to meet Marcus's eyes, those cold blue eyes she'd once thought were kind. Marcus, she said evenly, I didn't realize you were attending. The Ashford family has been supporting the Children's Hospital for 3 generations. I wouldn't miss it. His smile never reached his eyes as he looked Evan up and down with barely concealed contempt. Though I see you've brought some rather unexpected company. How democratic of you. Evan Hale, Evan said, extending his hand with a composure that impressed Lena. Nice to meet you. Marcus didn't take the offered hand. Yes, I know who you are. Hard not to, given the media coverage. Tell me, how does it feel to be this week's charity case? Marcus, Lena warned, her voice low and dangerous. What? I'm simply curious about the man who's become the face of your little philanthropic awakening. Marcus took a sip of champagne, his movements deliberately casual, though I have to wonder if he understands the difference between genuine concern and performance art. You want to talk about performance art? Evan's voice was quiet, but there was steel in it. You spent 2 years performing love while planning to monetize someone's trust. At least my relationship with Lena is honest. Something flickered across Marcus's face, surprise that the driver had a spine perhaps, or anger at being challenged by someone he considered beneath him. Relationship, Marcus repeated, his tone mocking. Is that what we're calling it? How long do you think this will last exactly? A month? 2? Until the novelty wears off and she remembers who she actually is. I know exactly who I am, Lena said sharply. Maybe for the first time in my life, actually, and I have Evan to thank for that, not you. Oh, Lena. Marcus's expression shifted to something that might have looked like pity if it weren't so calculated. You're a billionaire who runs a multinational corporation. He's a driver who can barely afford rent. You really think this ends well? You think he's not going to eventually resent you for every advantage you have that he doesn't? Or worse, start expecting you to fix all his problems with your checkbook? You're projecting, Evan said calmly. Just because you saw Lena as a bank account doesn't mean everyone does. Marcus's facade cracked slightly, his jaw tightening. You have no idea what you're talking about. Lena and I understood each other. We were equals, partners in building something bigger than ourselves. You were using her, Evan corrected. There's a difference. And what are you doing? Marcus leaned in, his voice dropping to something venomous. Playing the noble working-class hero, pretending you don't see the opportunities here? Please, you've got a sick kid and mounting bills. You really expect me to believe you're not thinking about how convenient it is that Lena can afford the best doctors, the best medications, the best everything. Lena felt Evan flinch beside her, and her blood turned to ice. That's enough. Is it? Marcus's attention swung back to her. Because from where I'm standing, you've traded one strategic relationship for another. At least I had the decency to stay in our tax bracket. The difference, Lena said, her voice shaking with controlled fury, is that Evan actually cares about me. Not my portfolio. Not my last name. Me. Something you never bothered to do. I cared about our future. Our potential. The empire we could have built together. You cared about my inheritance. There's a difference, though I can see how you'd confuse the two. A small crowd had begun to gather, people pretending not to watch while absolutely watching. Lena could see her mother moving toward them through the crowd, her expression alarmed. "You know what the real tragedy is," Marcus said, his voice loud enough now that people weren't even pretending not to listen. "You could have had everything. A partner who understood your world, your responsibilities, your legacy. Instead, you're slumming it with someone who will always be a tourist in your life, someone who will never truly understand the burden of real wealth, real power, real consequence." "You're right," Evan said suddenly, and Lena's heart stuttered. "I don't understand your world. I don't understand how someone can value stock prices over people. I don't understand how you can look at another human being and see a quarterly return. I don't understand how you can lie to someone for 2 years and still think you're the victim in this story." "You don't understand anything," Marcus spat. "You're a driver. You serve people like us. That's all you'll ever be. And you," Evan said quietly, "are exactly the kind of person who makes people like Lena forget who they really are. So yeah, I'm a driver. I'm also a father who would do anything for his kid. A man who's lost everything that mattered and rebuilt his life from nothing. Someone who knows the difference between net worth and self-worth. If that makes me less than you, I'll wear that badge proudly." The silence that followed was deafening. Lena could feel every eye in the room on them, could practically hear phones being pulled out to capture this moment, could sense tomorrow's headlines writing themselves. She didn't care. "I need you to leave," Lena said to Marcus, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet ballroom. "Now. This is a public event, hosted by my family, at a museum where my mother sits on the board. So when I say leave, I mean it." Lena stepped forward, putting herself between Marcus and Evan. "You had 2 years of my life. You don't get another second." Marcus's expression cycled through shock, anger, and finally calculation. He was already planning his response. Lena could see it, already figuring out how to spin this to his advantage. "You'll regret this," he said quietly. "All of it. The foundation, the publicity stunt, him." He gestured dismissively at Evan. "When this falls apart, and it will, don't come looking for second chances." "I wouldn't dream of it," Lena said. Marcus turned on his heel and walked away, his exit slightly undermined by the fact that he had to navigate through a crowd of people who were absolutely going to gossip about this for months. The moment he was gone, the ballroom erupted in whispers. Lena felt her mother's hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "Well," Eleanor said dryly, "that was dramatic. Your father's publicist is probably having heart palpitations." "I don't care," Lena said, and realized she meant it. He needed to hear it. They all did. "Yes," her mother agreed. "Though perhaps next time we could arrange the public confrontation somewhere without quite so many cameras?" She smiled slightly, taking the sting from her words. "Come on, both of you. Let's get some air before someone decides to make this worse." They found a quiet balcony overlooking Fifth Avenue. The city lights spread out below them like scattered diamonds. Evan stood apart from them both, his hands gripping the railing, his shoulders tight with tension. "I'm sorry," Lena said, moving to stand beside him, "for all of that. For what he said about Sophie. He wasn't wrong, though, was he?" Evan's voice was rough. "Sophie does need better medical care. I am barely making rent. And you could afford to fix all of that with what you probably spend on shoes in a month." "Evan, I'm not saying he was right about everything. I'm not using you. I'm not seeing you as a checkbook. But he hit a nerve because there's truth in it. How do we build something real when the power dynamic is so fundamentally unbalanced?" Lena felt something cold settle in her chest. "So what are you saying? That we should just give up because it's complicated?" "I'm saying I don't know how to do this." Evan turned to face her, and the anguish in his expression broke her heart. "I don't know how to be with someone who can solve my problems with a phone call when I've spent 3 years learning to solve them myself. I don't know how to accept help without feeling like I'm exactly what Marcus said I was. And I don't know how to protect Sophie from getting hurt when this," he gestured between them, "inevitably gets too hard." "Why does it have to be inevitable?" Lena demanded. "Why can't we just figure it out as we go?" "Because I've already lost one person I loved," Evan said, his voice cracking, "and watching Sophie lose someone else might actually destroy us both. I can't be selfish enough to risk that just because being with you makes me feel alive again." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with fear and longing and the weight of too many complications. You think I'm not scared? Lena whispered. You think I'm not terrified of screwing this up? I'm a woman who almost married someone who saw me as an investment portfolio. My track record for relationships is objectively terrible, but I'd rather try and fail with you than succeed at anything else. Even if trying means potentially hurting Sophie? Especially then, because Sophie deserves to see her father happy. She deserves to see that love is worth the risk, even when it's scary. And she deserves to know that people don't just leave because things get hard. Evan closed his eyes, and Lena could see him warring with himself. Fear against hope. Caution against possibility. I don't know if I'm brave enough for this, he said finally. Then let me be brave enough for both of us, Lena said, until you can catch up. Before Evan could respond, the balcony door opened and a museum staff member appeared, looking apologetic. Ms. Cross, your daughter is asking for you. Evan's eyes widened. Sophie, is she okay? She's fine, the woman assured him quickly. Just finished with the dinosaur tour and wanted to find you both. She's quite insistent. They found Sophie in the Great Hall, still chattering excitedly to Eleanor about the Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton she'd seen, her purple dress slightly rumpled from what had clearly been an adventure. Dad! Lena! She ran to them, her face glowing. They have a real T-Rex. An actual real one. Well, bones of a real one. And the museum lady said it's 67 million years old and it's a girl T-Rex and her name is Sue, and Sophie paused for breath, noticing the tension in the air. What's wrong? Nothing, sweet pea, Evan said, but his voice was strained. Sophie looked between them with the uncanny perception of children everywhere. Did something bad happen? Just some grown-up drama, Lena said, kneeling down to Sophie's level. Nothing for you to worry about. Was it the man who made Dad look sad? Of course Sophie had noticed. Of course she'd seen. You saw that? Evan asked carefully. A little bit, before Mrs. Eleanor took me to see the dinosaurs. Sophie touched her father's face with small hands. He was mean to you. I didn't like him. Yeah, well, sometimes people are mean, Evan said, pulling her into a hug. But it's okay. We're okay. Sophie pulled back, looking at him seriously. Are you and Lena still friends? The question was so simple, so direct, that both Lena and Evan were struck silent for a moment. Yes, Lena said firmly, before Evan could spiral into doubt. We're still friends. Good, Sophie nodded, satisfied. Because you make Dad smile. He hasn't smiled this much since Mommy died. The words hit Evan visibly, his breath catching. Eleanor, watching this whole exchange with careful attention, spoke up gently. Sophie, how would you like some ice cream? I believe there's an excellent gelato place that's open late, just around the corner. Can I get 2 scoops? You can get 3 scoops, Eleanor said, and sprinkles. Come on, let's give your father and Lena a moment to talk. As Eleanor guided Sophie away, promising elaborate desserts and more dinosaur facts, Lena and Evan stood alone again in the glittering ballroom, surrounded by strangers who were still watching them with undisguised curiosity. She's right, you know, Lena said quietly. I do make you smile. And you make me feel human. That counts for something. It counts for everything, Evan admitted. That's what makes it so terrifying. So what do we do? Evan looked at her for a long moment. This woman who'd walked away from a wedding, revolutionized her company, and defended him in front of Manhattan's elite, all because she believed in choosing what felt right over what looked good on paper. We try, he said finally, slowly, carefully, with every safeguard we can think of to protect Sophie. But we try. Yeah? Yeah. Evan reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. I can't promise it'll work. I can't promise I won't panic again when things get hard, but I can promise I'll keep trying as long as you will. Deal, Lena said, her heart feeling lighter than it had in hours. They stood there, hands clasped, the ballroom swirling around them, and for a moment everything else faded away. The photographers, the gossip, the complications, the impossibility of it all, none of it mattered as much as this simple connection. Then reality intruded in the form of Lena's publicist, Caroline, who appeared looking like she'd aged 10 years in the past hour. We need to talk, she said without preamble. The Marcus confrontation is already viral. We need a response, a strategy, Something before this spirals completely out of control. Let it spiral, Lena said. Caroline blinked. I'm sorry, what? I said let it spiral. I'm done managing optics. I'm done performing for cameras. If people want to judge me for choosing someone genuine over someone convenient, that's their problem. Lena, the board just voted to approve my foundation initiative. They can deal with my personal life being messy. Lena squeezed Evan's hand. Real life is messy. People will either understand that or they won't. Caroline looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Lena's expression stopped her. Fine. But when this blows up, then we'll handle it, Lena said firmly. Together. After Caroline retreated, muttering about impossible clients and early retirement, Evan smiled at Lena. You realize you just made that woman's blood pressure skyrocket. She'll survive. She survived worse. Has she, though? Probably not, Lena admitted, but there's a first time for everything. They rejoined the party, and Lena made a point of introducing Evan to everyone who mattered, board members, investors, family friends. Some were polite, some were clearly judging, and a few were genuinely curious about the man who'd captured the runaway bride's attention. Through it all, Evan handled himself with a quiet dignity that impressed everyone he met. He didn't pretend to be someone he wasn't, didn't try to fake knowledge he didn't have. When a hedge fund manager asked his opinion on the current market volatility, Evan simply said, I'm better at reading people than reading portfolios. But I can tell you that the drivers in this city think a recession's coming because our tips have been getting smaller. The honesty was refreshing enough that people actually listened. By the time Eleanor returned with Sophie, who had indeed consumed 3 scoops of gelato and was now on a serious sugar high, the party was winding down. Guests were collecting coats, saying elaborate goodbyes, and pretending they hadn't just witnessed one of the most dramatic social events of the season. Time to go home? Evan asked Sophie, who was practically vibrating with energy. But I'm not tired. You will be, in about 20 minutes when the sugar crash hits. No, I won't. I'm going to stay awake forever and learn everything about dinosaurs and become a paleontologist and… Sophie yawned hugely, undermining her entire argument. Lena laughed. I think your dad might be right about the sugar crash. Dads are always right about sugar crashes, Evan said. It's in the manual. As they headed toward the exit, Lena felt someone watching her. She turned to see her father standing near the coat check, his expression unreadable. He'd been notably absent from the evening's drama, and Lena had honestly forgotten he was there. Go ahead, she told Evan. I'll meet you at the car. Richard Cross had built an empire through carefully calculated decisions and an ability to read people that bordered on supernatural. He'd taught Lena everything she knew about business, and right now he was studying her like she was a balance sheet he couldn't quite reconcile. That was quite a scene earlier, he said finally. I know. I'm sorry if it embarrassed the family. I'm not talking about the embarrassment. Her father's voice was thoughtful. I'm talking about the way you defended him. That driver. Evan. His name is Evan Hale, Dad, and he's not just a driver. He's a father, a decent man, and someone who sees me as more than a strategic asset. I can see that. Her father was quiet for a moment. Your mother thinks I should be concerned, that you're making decisions based on emotion rather than logic. And what do you think? I think, Richard said slowly, that I've watched you make logical decisions your entire life. Correct decisions. Strategic decisions, profitable decisions, and I've watched you become increasingly miserable with each one. Lena stared at her father, this man who'd rarely shared his feelings, who measured everything in quarterly returns and market share. When your mother and I got married, he continued, everyone said it was a perfect match. 2 powerful families, compatible assets, excellent merger potential. And they were right. On paper, it was perfect. But what nobody knew, what I rarely let myself acknowledge, is that I actually loved her. I wasn't supposed to. It was supposed to be strategic. But somewhere between the negotiations and the wedding planning, I fell in love with the woman I was supposed to be making a business arrangement with. He smiled slightly. It terrified me. Because suddenly I had something to lose that couldn't be quantified in a spreadsheet. I never knew that, Lena whispered. I never told you. I raised you to be strategic, logical, immune to the messy complications of emotion. And now I'm watching you choose those messy complications on purpose, and I realize I may have done you a disservice. You taught me everything I know about business. Yes, but I forgot to teach you that business isn't everything. Richard looked toward the exit, where Evan was visible through the glass doors holding Sophie's hand, waiting patiently. That man defended you tonight against someone wealthier, better connected, and objectively more advantageous to your career. He did it without hesitation, without calculation, without expecting anything in return. That's not something you find on a balance sheet. So you're saying, I'm saying be careful, be smart, protect yourself and that little girl from getting hurt, but don't let fear of complications stop you from choosing something real. Her father kissed her forehead, a rare gesture of affection. Your mother and I will support whatever you decide, even if it's terrifying. Lena hugged him, this complicated man who'd taught her to see the world as a chessboard and was now telling her it was okay to stop playing games. When she joined Evan and Sophie at the car, Evan took one look at her face and asked, "Everything okay?" My father just gave me relationship advice. I'm not entirely sure how to process that. Was it good advice? Surprisingly, yes. Lena smiled. He told me to choose something real. And what are you choosing? Lena looked at Sophie, who was already half asleep against Evan's shoulder, and at Evan himself, this man who'd helped her escape and shown her what really mattered. I'm choosing this, she said simply, whatever this is, whatever it becomes. The ride back to Evan's apartment was quiet. Sophie fully asleep now, the city passing by in streams of light outside the windows. When they arrived, Evan carefully carried Sophie upstairs, and Lena followed, suddenly uncertain about what came next. I should go, she said at his door. Let you both get some rest. Or, Evan said carefully, you could stay. Not like before, not hiding from the world, just stay. Because we want you here. Are you sure? No, he admitted, but I'm trying to be brave enough anyway. So Lena stayed. She helped Evan tuck Sophie into bed, the little girl mumbling sleepily about dinosaurs and museums, and whether Lena would still be there in the morning. I'll be here, Lena promised, and meant it. After Sophie was asleep, Lena and Evan sat on the couch with cups of tea, both of them processing the evening's chaos. Thank you, Evan said finally, for defending me tonight, for not letting Marcus diminish what we have, for being brave when I couldn't quite get there. Thank you for trying, Lena said, for not running when it got hard, for staying even when every logical part of you probably said to leave. The logical part of me is an idiot, Evan said. The rest of me knows that what we have is worth fighting for. He reached for her hand, and Lena let him, their fingers intertwining with a familiarity that belied how short they'd actually known each other. What happens now? She asked. I don't know. We figure it out together? Evan smiled. Take it day by day. Keep being honest with each other. Protect Sophie. Build something that's ours instead of trying to fit into either of our old worlds. A new world, Lena said, echoing her earlier words to him. A new world, he agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, the city humming beyond the windows, both of them terrified and hopeful in equal measure. Outside, tomorrow waited with all its complications and challenges and impossibilities. But here, in this small apartment with its worn furniture and dinosaur drawings on the walls, Lena felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt home. And when Evan kissed her, soft and careful and full of promise, she kissed him back and believed, maybe for the first time, that choosing what felt right over what looked good on paper wasn't just brave. It was the only choice that mattered. The morning after the gala, Lena woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains and the smell of burnt toast. She sat up, momentarily disoriented, before remembering where she was. Evan's apartment, Evan's couch, where she'd fallen asleep after their kiss, both of them too nervous to take things further, too unwilling to say goodbye. Voices drifted from the kitchen, Sophie's high-pitched chatter and Evan's low responses. Lena stood, smoothing down the borrowed t-shirt she'd slept in, and padded toward the sound. I'm just saying, if dinosaurs could come back, they should be nice dinosaurs, Sophie was explaining seriously. Like the ones that eat plants. Herbivores, Evan supplied, scraping burnt edges off toast. Yeah, those. Not the mean ones that eat people. The mean ones are called carnivores. I know that, Dad. I'm 6, not a baby. Lena leaned against the doorway, watching them. This casual intimacy, this morning routine that had nothing to do with her but somehow felt like home anyway. Sophie spotted her first. Lena, you stayed. Dad said you might leave early, but you didn't. I promised I'd be here, Lena said, moving into the kitchen. Besides, I heard there might be breakfast. There's toast, Evan said apologetically, holding up a piece that was more charcoal than bread. Very crispy toast. My favorite kind. They ate breakfast together, burnt toast with too much butter, scrambled eggs that were slightly rubbery, orange juice from concentrate. It was perfect and terrifying, because Lena could feel herself getting attached to this, to them, to the idea of more mornings like this. After breakfast, while Sophie was absorbed in coloring, Evan pulled Lena aside. I've been thinking, he said quietly, about what happens next, about how we navigate this without it becoming, he paused, searching for words, without it becoming what Marcus said it was. What do you mean? I mean, I need to figure out how to accept help without losing myself. How to let you be part of our lives without making you responsible for fixing everything that's broken. Evan's expression was troubled. Sophie's medication is due to be refilled this week. It's $400 I don't have, and the logical thing would be to ask you for help, but asking feels like proving Marcus right, Lena finished. Yeah. Lena thought carefully before responding. What if we made rules, boundaries that protect both of us? What kind of rules? Like, the foundation can help with things like medical costs and childcare, because that's literally what it's designed to do. Not because you're with me, but because you qualify. You let me treat you the same way I'd treat any other single parent who needs support. That feels like a loophole, Evan said, but there was a hint of relief in his voice. It's not a loophole. It's the whole point. You shouldn't have to choose between pride and Sophie's health. And I shouldn't have to watch you struggle when I have the resources to help, not as your girlfriend, but as someone who's trying to fix a broken system. Girlfriend, Evan repeated, a small smile playing at his lips. Is that what you are? I don't know. What am I? Evan pulled her closer, his hand settling at her waist. You're the woman who turned my entire life upside down in the span of a week, who makes Sophie light up in ways I haven't seen since Jennifer died, who terrifies me and gives me hope in equal measure. Kissed her forehead. And yeah, I think girlfriend works. Good, Lena murmured against his chest. Because I'm not really sure how to do this, but I want to try. We're quite a pair, Evan said, both of us making it up as we go. At least we're making it up together. They stood there for a moment, wrapped in each other, before Sophie's voice broke through. Are you guys being gross? Because Mrs. Chen says when grown-ups stand really close and whisper, they're being gross. Despite everything, they both laughed. The next few weeks settled into a strange new rhythm. Lena split her time between her penthouse and Evan's apartment, between board meetings and dinosaur documentaries, between her old world and this new one she was building. It wasn't easy. Every time she left Evan's apartment, cameras were waiting. Every public appearance generated headlines. Every decision was scrutinized through the lens of the runaway bride and her driver. But the foundation was gaining traction. Applications poured in from single parents across the city, people like Evan who were working impossible hours and still falling behind. Lena threw herself into the work, hiring staff, setting up programs, partnering with hospitals and childcare centers, and job training facilities. You're building something real here, her mother said during one of their weekly lunches. I'm impressed. Don't sound so surprised, Lena said, but she was smiling. I'm not surprised. I'm proud. Eleanor set down her fork, studying her daughter. You seem different, lighter, somehow. I feel different, like I'm finally doing something that matters instead of just maximizing shareholder value. And Evan? How is that going? Lena hesitated. It's good, really good, but also complicated. Every time we go out, there are cameras. Every time I try to help him with something practical, he worries about becoming dependent. And Sophie, she paused, her heart clenching. Sophie's getting so attached. She asks when I'm coming over, draws pictures for me, tells everyone at school about my friend Lena, who knows about dinosaurs. That scares you, Eleanor observed. It terrifies me. What if this doesn't work? What if I screw this up and break both their hearts? What if you don't? Her mother countered. What if you're building something lasting with someone who actually values you? Would that be so terrible? It would be a miracle, Lena said quietly, and I'm not sure I believe in those anymore. But despite her fears, Lena kept showing up. She attended Sophie's school play, sitting in the audience with other parents, cheering when Sophie played Tree Number 3 with absolute commitment. She helped Evan fix his car when it broke down, getting grease on her designer jeans and not caring. She read bedtime stories and learned to make grilled cheese that wasn't burnt, and slowly, carefully, became part of their small family. And then, 6 weeks after the gala, everything fell apart. It started with a phone call. Evan's landlord informing him that the building had been sold and all tenants needed to vacate within 60 days. The new owners were renovating, converting the apartments into luxury condos that would rent for triple the current rate. It's fine, Evan said when he told Lena, but his hands were shaking. I'll find something else. There are other apartments. But there weren't. Not in New York, not in any neighborhood with decent schools, not for anything Evan could afford. They looked at 17 different places over 2 weeks. Too expensive, too far from Sophie's school, too dangerous, too small, too broken. Maybe we need to look in New Jersey, Evan said one evening, exhausted after another failed apartment search. Commute into the city for work. That's 2 hours each way, Lena protested. When would you see Sophie? I don't know, Lena. The frustration in his voice made her flinch. I don't have a lot of options here. I can't afford Manhattan anymore. Hell, I can barely afford Queens. Then let me help. No. The word was sharp, final. We talked about this. The foundation can help with medical costs and childcare, but I'm not letting you pay my rent. That crosses a line. What line? The line between helping someone you care about and maintaining some arbitrary sense of pride. The line between being partners and being your charity case. Evan's voice rose, and in the bedroom, Sophie stirred. He lowered his voice, but the intensity remained. Every time you swoop in to fix something, it reminds me how unequal this is, how much you have, and how little I can offer in return. I don't need you to offer anything in return. I just need you. That's easy to say when you're not the one who can't afford to keep a roof over your kid's head. The words hung between them, sharp and painful. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. So what are you saying? That we can't be together because I have money and you don't? That's it? Evan rubbed his face, looking suddenly exhausted. I'm saying I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be with you and still be the kind of father Sophie needs, the kind of man I need to be. What if you can't be that man without help? What if accepting help is part of being strong, not a sign of weakness? You don't understand. Then explain it to me. Lena's voice cracked. Because from where I'm standing, you're so afraid of appearing weak that you're willing to uproot Sophie's entire life instead of letting someone who loves you help. The word hung in the air. Love. Neither of them had said it before, had been too careful, too afraid. Lena, no, you know what? You're right. I don't understand. I don't understand how you can say you want to be with me, but refuse to let me be part of your life in any meaningful way. I don't understand how you can claim this is about protecting Sophie when what you're really protecting is your own pride. That's not fair. Isn't it? Lena was crying now, not caring. You want me to fit into your world, but you won't let me bring any of mine into it. You want me to be part of your family, but only on your terms, only when it's convenient, only when it doesn't challenge your self-image as someone who doesn't need anyone. I lost my wife, Evan said, his voice breaking. I lost Jennifer, and it nearly destroyed me. The only thing that kept me going was proving I could take care of Sophie on my own, that I could be enough for her. If I start depending on you, if I let you become essential, and then you leave, I'm not going to leave. You don't know that. Nobody knows that. Life happens, Lena. People leave. People die. People get tired of complicated and choose easier paths. And I can't. His voice cracked completely. I can't let Sophie go through that again. I can't watch her heart break when someone else she loves disappears. So instead you're going to push me away first? Lena whispered. Make sure it happens on your terms? Evan didn't answer, but the silence was answer enough. Lena grabbed her bag, her vision blurred with tears. You know what the saddest part is? You're so busy protecting Sophie from getting hurt that you're hurting her yourself. She loves me, Evan. She draws me pictures and saves me the best dinosaur facts and asks every single day when I'm coming over. And you're going to take that away from her, not because you have to, but because you're scared. Lena, wait. But she was already leaving, walking past Sophie's bedroom where dinosaur drawings covered the walls, past the kitchen where they'd shared so many meals, past the life she'd been building that apparently was too fragile to survive reality. She made it to her car before she completely broke down. The next week was hell. Lena threw herself into work, approving foundation applications with an almost manic focus. Every single parent who needed help, every child who needed medical care, every family struggling to survive, she helped them all, as if she could fix the world's problems if she couldn't fix her own. Her mother found her in her office late one night, surrounded by files, looking exhausted. "You're avoiding going home," Eleanor observed. "I'm working." "You're hiding." Her mother sat down across from her. "What happened with Evan?" "We broke up, or we're breaking up. I don't know. He's choosing pride over partnership, and I'm choosing not to beg someone to let me love them." "That's very rational." "I'm trying to be rational." "Lena, darling, you ran away from your own wedding and spent a week living in a driver's apartment. Rational isn't really your brand anymore." Despite everything, Lena almost smiled. "What am I supposed to do? He won't let me help. He won't let me in. He's so terrified of being vulnerable that he'd rather lose everything than accept support." "Sounds familiar," her mother said pointedly. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you spent 28 years refusing to be vulnerable because you were terrified of being used. And now you're judging Evan for having the same fear from a different angle." Eleanor leaned forward. "He's not wrong to be scared, Lena. The power imbalance between you is real. The risk of dependence is real. His fear of losing someone else he loves is absolutely real. So what am I supposed to do? Just give up?" "No, you're supposed to fight for him, the same way he fought for you when Marcus tried to diminish what you had." Her mother's expression was gentle. "Love isn't about swooping in to fix everything. Sometimes it's about sitting in the mess with someone and proving you won't leave just because it's hard." Lena thought about that conversation for 3 days. Thought about it while approving foundation grants. Thought about it while looking at Sophie's drawings that still covered her refrigerator. Thought about it while lying alone in her penthouse that had never felt more empty. On the 4th day, she went back to Evan's apartment. It was early evening, the kind of gray autumn day that made the city feel heavy. Lena climbed the familiar stairs, her heart hammering, unsure of her welcome. Evan answered the door looking like he hadn't slept much either. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. "Can I come in?" Lena asked quietly. He stepped aside. The apartment was full of boxes, half-packed, messy, evidence of a life being dismantled. "You're moving," Lena said, her heart sinking. "Found a place in Newark. It's smaller, farther, but it's what I can afford." Evan's voice was flat, defeated. "Sophie's not happy about changing schools, but she'll adjust." "Evan, before you say anything, I need to say something first." He turned to face her fully. "I was wrong. About everything. About pushing you away, about choosing pride over letting you help, about thinking I had to do this alone to prove something. What changed your mind?" "Sophie." Evan's smile was sad. "She asked me why you stopped coming over, and I tried to explain about independence and self-reliance and being strong. And you know what she said? She said that Mommy always told her that asking for help when you need it is the bravest thing you can do." Lena felt tears building again. "Jennifer used to say that," Evan continued. "When she was sick, when she knew she was dying, she made me promise to ask for help, to let people in, to not try to carry everything alone." His voice cracked. "And I've been breaking that promise for 3 years because I was so scared of needing anyone that I convinced myself being alone was the same as being strong." "You're not alone," Lena whispered. "I know. That's what terrifies me.
Oras o untem.
Because needing you, depending on you, loving you, it gives you the power to destroy me. And I've been so focused on protecting myself from that possibility that I've been destroying us anyway." "So what do we do?" Evan stepped closer, taking her hands. "We try again. Slower this time, with better boundaries and more honest conversations and a commitment to actually working through the hard stuff instead of running from it." "I can do that," Lena said. And you let me keep my pride where I need it, and I'll work on accepting help where I need it. And we both acknowledge that this is going to be messy and complicated and sometimes really hard. I can do that too. And we put Sophie first, always, even when it means making sacrifices we don't want to make. Especially then. Evan pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. I love you. I'm terrified of loving you, but I love you anyway. And I'm sorry I let fear almost ruin what we have. I love you too, Lena said, even when you're being stubborn and self-destructive and impossibly proud. Even then? Especially then. They kissed, and it felt like coming home and starting over all at once. Dad? Sophie's voice came from the bedroom, tentative. Is Lena here? Yeah, sweet pea. She's here. Sophie appeared in the doorway, her expression wary. Are you staying this time? Lena knelt down to her level. I'm staying, if you want me to. I want you to. Sophie's voice was small. I drew you 17 new dinosaur pictures, and Dad said you might not come back to see them. I'm sorry, Lena said, pulling Sophie into a hug. I'm so sorry. I should have come back sooner. It's okay. Dad says sometimes grown-ups need time to figure stuff out. Sophie pulled back, looking at Lena seriously. Did you figure it out? I think so. Did your dad figure it out? Dad's still figuring stuff out. He's not as smart as me. From across the room, Evan laughed, a real laugh that sounded like relief and hope. You're absolutely right, he said. I'm definitely still figuring stuff out. Lena stayed for dinner that night. Take-out Chinese food eaten straight from containers because most of the dishes were packed. They talked about Newark, about schools, about the future with an honesty that had been missing before. I'm not moving to Newark, Evan said finally. Not because you'll pay my rent, but because running away from the problem isn't solving it. I'll figure something out. Take a second job, apply for housing assistance, something. But Sophie deserves to stay in her school with her friends. What if there was another option? Lena said carefully. If you're about to offer to buy me an apartment, I'm about to offer to hire you. Lena pulled out a folder she'd brought with her. The foundation needs a director of outreach, someone who understands the community we're serving, who can connect with applicants, who knows firsthand what single parents are dealing with. It's a real job with a real salary, $60,000 a year to start, with benefits, including full medical coverage. Evan stared at the job description. Lena, it's not charity, it's not me taking care of you, it's me recognizing that you have skills and experience that my foundation desperately needs. You'd be good at this, Evan, really good. She paused. But if it feels like a handout, if it crosses a line for you, I'll understand. We'll figure out something else. Evan read through the whole document carefully, his expression unreadable. Finally, he looked up at her. This is a real job? Completely real. I've had the position posted for 3 weeks and haven't found anyone qualified. Most applicants have degrees but no lived experience. You have both. I'd be working for you. You'd be working with me. There's a difference. And if we break up? The question hurt, but Lena understood it. Then you'd still have a job. I'd put it in writing if you want. Employment contract separate from personal relationship, termination only for cause, not for romantic complications. You've really thought this through. I've thought about nothing else for 4 days, Lena admitted. I want to help you, but I also want to respect your boundaries. This feels like a way to do both. Evan set down the folder, pulling Lena close. $60,000 a year would cover rent, Sophie's medication, everything, with room left over for savings. I know. I could take Sophie to the zoo on weekends, actually take her places without calculating every dollar. I know. I could build a life that's stable instead of constantly on the edge of disaster. That's the whole point of the foundation, Lena said softly. Nobody should have to live on the edge of disaster just because they're raising a kid alone. When would I start? Is Monday too soon? Evan laughed, pressing his face into her hair. You're really something, you know that? Is that a yes? It's a yes, with one condition. What's that? We do this right. Real boundaries between work and personal life. Real conversations when things get hard. Real commitment to making this work. I can do that, Lena promised. Can you? I'm going to try my hardest. Sophie, who'd been listening to this whole exchange with interest, spoke up. Does this mean we're not moving to Newark? Looks that way, Sweet Pea. Good, because Newark sounds boring and I like my school. She looked between them. Also, does this mean Lena's my dad's girlfriend now? Because Mia at school has been asking and I didn't know what to say. Lena and Evan exchanged glances. Yeah, Evan said. Lena's my girlfriend. Finally, Sophie said, rolling her eyes with the dramatic exasperation only 6-year-olds could manage. I thought you guys would never figure it out. Can we have ice cream now? They had ice cream. And then they unpacked the boxes Evan had packed, putting his life back together in that small apartment that suddenly felt full of possibility instead of limitation. Late that night, after Sophie was asleep and Lena was preparing to leave, Evan caught her at the door. Thank you, he said quietly, for not giving up on us, for fighting when I was too scared to. Thank you for letting me in, even when it was terrifying. They stood there in the doorway, neither wanting to say goodbye, both knowing they had to. I'll see you Monday, Evan said, at the foundation. My first day. Your first day, Lena echoed, smiling. Think I'll be any good at this? I think you're going to be amazing. Evan kissed her, slow and sweet and full of promise. I love you, Lena Cross. I love you too, Evan Hale. As Lena drove home through the city streets, her phone buzzed with a text from Sophie, sent from Evan's phone. Dad says I can text you now. Here's a dinosaur emoji. And a heart. The heart is from me, not Dad. He's too embarrassed. Love, Sophie. Lena saved that text, knowing she'd read it 100 times in the days to come. Because this messy, complicated, imperfect love was exactly what she'd been running toward when she fled that wedding. It was real. It was honest. It was worth every difficult conversation, every moment of fear, every risk they'd taken. And for the first time in her life, Lena wasn't afraid of what came next. She was ready for it. Monday morning arrived with the crisp promise of new beginnings. Evan stood outside the Cross Foundation offices, a restored brownstone in Chelsea that Lena had chosen specifically because it didn't look like a corporate fortress. His hands were sweating despite the autumn chill, and he checked his watch for the third time in as many minutes. His first day of work. His first real job with benefits and stability since Jennifer died. His first step into Lena's world as something other than the man she was dating. You've got this, he muttered to himself, the same words he'd whispered to Sophie that morning when she'd been nervous about a spelling test. The door opened before he could reach for it, and Lena stood there, professional in a charcoal suit, her hair pulled back, every inch the executive. But her smile was soft, just for him. Ready? She asked. Terrified, he admitted. Good. That means you care. She stepped aside to let him enter. Come on, I'll introduce you to the team. The foundation staff was small but passionate, a mix of social workers, administrators, and former recipients of assistance who understood the mission from lived experience. They welcomed Evan warmly, and if anyone thought it was strange that the director's boyfriend was now their colleague, they were professional enough not to show it. Lena had set him up in an office next to the main reception area, close enough to greet applicants but separate from her own space upstairs. The boundary was intentional, Evan knew, a way to keep their professional and personal lives from bleeding too much into each other. Your first assignment, Lena said, handing him a stack of applications. These are people who've been waitlisted for child care assistance. I need you to review them, conduct interviews, and make recommendations. You know what questions to ask better than anyone. Evan flipped through the files, seeing his own story reflected back at him in different handwriting. Single parents working multiple jobs. Medical bills that never stopped coming. Children who needed things their parents couldn't afford. I can do this, he said, more to himself than to Lena. I know you can. She paused at the door. And Evan, when you're here, you're the director of outreach, not my boyfriend. If you have ideas that contradict mine, if you see problems with how we're operating, I need you to speak up. This only works if you're honest. Even if it causes conflict? Especially then. After she left, Evan sat alone in his new office, surrounded by other people's struggles, and felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Purpose beyond survival. the possibility of building something that mattered. His phone buzzed with a text from Sophie sent from school during recess. "Good luck on your first day, Dad. Remember to be brave like a T-Rex but nice like a Brachiosaurus. Love you." Evan smiled, saved the message, and got to work. The weeks that followed established a rhythm that was both exhilarating and exhausting. Evan threw himself into the foundation work, discovering a talent for connecting with applicants that the previous staff had lacked. He knew what questions to ask because he'd asked them of himself 1,000 times. He knew which barriers were real and which were bureaucratic nonsense. He knew how to spot the people who were one paycheck away from catastrophe because he'd been that person. "You're good at this," Maria, one of the social workers, told him after watching him conduct an intake interview with a single father whose story could have been Evan's own. Like, really good. That guy was so closed off when he came in, and you had him opening up within 5 minutes. "I just treated him like a person instead of a case file," Evan said. "Exactly. That's what makes you good at it." At home, things settled into a different kind of rhythm. Lena started spending more nights at Evan's apartment, keeping a drawer of clothes there, learning Sophie's bedtime routine, becoming part of the fabric of their daily life. They were careful, always careful, to move at Sophie's pace, to make sure she felt secure in this new configuration of family. "Is Lena going to live here forever?" Sophie asked one night, matter of fact in the way children were when discussing things adults found complicated. Evan and Lena exchanged glances across the dinner table, spaghetti night, which had become a weekly tradition. "Would you want that?" Evan asked carefully. Sophie considered this seriously. "Mia's parents got divorced and now she has 2 houses and it's confusing. I don't want that." "Nobody's getting divorced, Sweet Pea. Lena and I aren't married." "But you love each other, right?" "Right," Lena confirmed. "And you're not going to leave like Mommy did?" The question hit Evan in the chest, but it was Lena who answered, her voice steady and honest. "I'm not going to leave on purpose, Sophie. I can't promise nothing bad will ever happen because life is unpredictable. But I can promise that I choose to be here. Every day, I choose you and your dad." Sophie nodded, satisfied with this answer, in a way that adults rarely were. "Okay, then yeah, you should probably live here. It's silly to keep going back and forth when you're just going to come back anyway." "Is that your professional opinion?" Evan asked, trying to lighten the moment. "Yes. Also, we need more bathroom space because Lena has a lot of face stuff." Despite the weight of the conversation, both adults laughed. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Evan and Lena sat on the fire escape outside his bedroom window, the city spread out below them in a glittering carpet of light. "She's right, Lena said, about the back and forth being silly." "Are you asking to move in?" "I'm saying I'm already basically living here. We're just pretending I'm not." Lena turned to face him. "But I don't want to rush this if you're not ready. I know it's only been a few months, and I know Sophie's adjustment is the priority." "I'm ready," Evan interrupted. "Terrified but ready." "You're always terrified." "Yeah, well, you're kind of a big deal. It's nerve-wracking." Lena laughed, leaning into him. "You know what's funny? In my world, you're the big deal. You're the one who helped me figure out who I actually am. The one who taught me that happiness doesn't require a board meeting and a 5-year plan." "I did that?" "You did that." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city breathe below them, both of them thinking about the enormity of the step they were discussing. "My lease is up in 3 months anyway," Lena said. "The penthouse never felt like home. Too big, too empty. Too much my mother's taste and not enough mine." "This apartment is tiny," Evan warned. 1 bedroom, barely functional kitchen, neighbors who argue about everything, and it's the first place that's felt like home in years," Lena finished. "So yeah, I want to move in, if you're sure." "I'm sure," Evan said, and meant it, but the universe, it seemed, had other plans. 2 weeks later, Evan's landlord called with news that the building's sale had fallen through. The new development deal was dead and the building would remain rent-controlled apartments. Evan's lease was safe. It should have been good news. It was good news. Except it came the same day that a reporter from a tabloid showed up at the foundation office, asking invasive questions about Lena's relationship with an employee and whether the foundation was really charitable or just a way to funnel money to her boyfriend. Evan handled it professionally, declining to comment and showing the reporter out. But the article came out anyway, full of insinuation and thinly veiled accusations. The headline read, "Love or Fraud? Inside Lena Cross's Questionable Foundation Practices." "It's garbage," Lena said, reading the article on her phone with barely contained fury. "Completely baseless. They have no evidence because there is no evidence." "But it raises questions," Evan said quietly. They were in Lena's office, the door closed, both of them trying to process what this meant. About conflict of interest, about ethics, about whether hiring me was actually appropriate. "You were the most qualified candidate, who also happened to be sleeping with the director. Lena, you have to see how this looks." "I don't care how it looks. I care about what's true." "But your board cares how it looks. Your donors care. The people we're trying to help care." Evan ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. "This is exactly what I was afraid of, that being with you would complicate things in ways that hurt what you're trying to build." "So what are you saying? That we made a mistake?" "I'm saying maybe we need to be more careful. Maybe I need to step back from the foundation." "Absolutely not." Lena's voice was sharp. "You're good at this job, Evan, really good. The families you've helped, the programs you've suggested, the way you've connected with people. We need you here. I need you here. Even if it costs you your credibility." "My credibility survived running away from my own wedding. It'll survive this." But the damage was harder to contain than either of them anticipated. 2 board members called for an ethics review. 3 major donors requested meetings to discuss concerns. Marcus Ashford, predictably, issued a statement expressing worry about the foundation's practices, his false concern dripping with vindication. "He's loving this," Lena said, reading Marcus's statement with disgust. "He gets to play the concerned ex-fiancé while undermining everything I'm building." "Maybe he has a point," Evan said quietly. "Don't you dare take his side." "I'm not taking his side. I'm acknowledging reality." Evan set down his coffee, meeting her eyes. "Lena, I love you. I love working at the foundation. I love the life we're building. But if me being here hurts the mission, if it gives people reasons to doubt the good work you're doing, then maybe—" "Don't finish that sentence. Someone has to say it." They stared at each other across her desk, the weight of impossible choices pressing down on both of them. The ethics review took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of lawyers and accountants and investigators going through every decision Lena had made since launching the foundation. They interviewed staff, reviewed applications, examined financial records with microscopic attention. During those 3 weeks, Evan continued working, but the joy had gone out of it. Every interaction was overshadowed by the question of whether he deserved to be there. Every success felt tainted by the accusation that it was nepotism rather than merit. "You're miserable," Maria observed, finding Evan staring at his computer without actually working. "I'm fine." "You're absolutely not fine. None of us are." She closed his office door, sitting across from him. "Look, I don't know you and Lena personally, and I don't need to. What I know is that since you started here, our approval ratings have gone up 40%. More families are getting help. More applicants are actually following through with programs because you make them feel seen rather than processed. That's not nepotism. That's you being damn good at your job." "But the optics, screw the optics. I've worked in nonprofit for 15 years, and I've seen directors hire their incompetent cousins, their college roommates, their country club friends. You know what all those people had in common? They were terrible at the job." Maria leaned forward. "You're not terrible. You're the best hire Lena's made. And if the board can't see that, then they're idiots." "What if being good at the job isn't enough? Then we fight to make it enough." The ethics review concluded on a Wednesday. Lena called an emergency board meeting, and Evan wasn't invited. He waited in his office, trying to work, mostly staring at the wall and imagining worst-case scenarios. When Lena finally emerged 3 hours later, her expression was unreadable. "Well?" Evan asked, his heart in his throat. "The review found no evidence of wrongdoing, financial mismanagement, or conflicts of interest that violated our bylaws." Lena's voice was carefully controlled. "They acknowledged that while our personal relationship creates the appearance of impropriety, there's no actual impropriety occurring." "That's good, right?" "It's good. With conditions." Lena handed him a document. "The board wants new oversight protocols. All hiring decisions involving personal relationships need unanimous board approval. All financial decisions over $10,000 need dual sign-off. And they want quarterly reviews of foundation effectiveness to ensure personal relationships aren't affecting professional judgment. Evan read through the requirements, his chest tight. This is them saying they don't trust you. This is them saying they don't trust us, Lena corrected. But it's also them saying they're willing to let us prove ourselves. It could have been worse. Could it? Evan looked at her, really looked at her. Lena, you've had to fight for every decision since we got together. First the wedding, then the foundation, now this. When does it stop being worth it? It stops being worth it when I stop loving you, Lena said simply. Which isn't happening. So we deal with the oversight, we prove the board wrong, and we keep doing the work that matters. Just like that? Just like that. Evan wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that love and good intentions were enough to overcome every obstacle. But doubt had taken root in his mind, fed by every critical article, every questioning look, every reminder that his relationship with Lena made everything more complicated. That night, lying in bed after Sophie was asleep, Lena felt the distance between them even though they were inches apart. Talk to me, she said quietly. I don't know what to say. Then just think out loud. Let me hear what's going on in your head. Evan was quiet for a long time. Finally, I keep thinking about what happens when the next crisis comes. Because there will be another one, another article, another accusation, another board member questioning whether we're legitimate. And every time you have to fight harder to justify us, to prove that loving me isn't a mistake. It's not a mistake. You say that now. But what about in a year, 5 years? When you've spent half a decade defending decisions that would have been simple if you'd chosen someone else? Someone from your world who didn't come with all this baggage? Lena turned to face him in the darkness. You think I want someone from my world? I ran away from my wedding specifically to escape people from my world. People who saw me as a business opportunity rather than a person. I know, but there's got to be a middle ground between Marcus Ashford and the guy who showed up to your gala in a rented tux. That wasn't a rented tux. I bought it for you. You know what I mean, Lena. I'm always going to be the outsider, the one who doesn't quite fit, the one people question. Good, Lena said fiercely, because I don't want someone who fits perfectly into a world I'm trying to change. I want someone who challenges it, who reminds me what matters, who chose me when I was crying in a parking garage in a wedding dress, not because of what I could offer him, but because he saw someone who needed help. That's a pretty low bar for a relationship. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, basic human decency and genuine care are rarer than you'd think, especially in my world. Lena reached for his hand in the darkness. I'm not going to stop fighting for us, Evan. Not because I'm stubborn, though I am, but because what we have is worth fighting for. The question is whether you believe that too. I do believe it, Evan said. I'm just scared that believing it isn't enough. Then let me be scared with you. Let's be scared together instead of you carrying it alone. Evan pulled her closer, pressing his face into her hair. I don't know how you stay so certain. I'm not certain. I'm terrified most of the time, but I'm terrified with you, which somehow makes it bearable. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, both of them aware that certainty was a luxury they didn't have, but commitment was a choice they could make every single day. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor to the foundation. Eleanor Cross, impeccably dressed as always, strode into the office like she owned it, which, given her family's donation history, wasn't far from the truth. Mrs. Cross, the receptionist stammered, we weren't expecting you. I'm here to see Mr. Hale, Eleanor said crisply. Is he available? Evan emerged from his office, surprised and slightly alarmed. Eleanor? Is everything okay? Is Lena? Lena is fine. Sit down, Evan. We need to talk. They went into his office, and Eleanor shut the door with the kind of finality that suggested this conversation wasn't optional. I've been reading the coverage of the ethics review, she began without preamble. And I've been having conversations with several board members who have concerns about your relationship with my daughter. Evan's stomach dropped. I understand if you think I should resign. Don't be ridiculous. If I thought you should resign, I'd have started with that. Eleanor sat across from him, her posture perfect, her expression assessing. I'm here because I want to understand your intentions. My intentions? Toward Lena, toward this foundation, toward the future you're building together. Eleanor's gaze was sharp. My daughter has been through enough disappointment. I need to know that you're committed to this, not just swept up in the romance of rescuing each other. I love her, Evan said simply. Love isn't enough. Believe me, I've seen plenty of relationships founded on love that crumbled under the weight of reality. Eleanor leaned forward. What I need to know is whether you're strong enough to weather the scrutiny that comes with being part of Lena's life. Whether you're secure enough in yourself to handle being called a gold digger, a charity case, an opportunist, because those accusations won't stop. If anything, they'll get worse. I know that. Do you? Because walking away from my daughter's wedding was brave. Building a relationship with her while living in your apartment was romantic. But now you're in the real world, where every decision you make will be questioned, every motive examined, every relationship analyzed for weakness. That's the price of loving someone like Lena. Are you willing to pay it? Evan thought about the past few months. The cameras, the headlines, the constant feeling of being watched and judged, the board review, the accusatory articles, the knowledge that his presence in Lena's life made everything harder for her. No, he said honestly. I'm not willing to pay that price. Eleanor's expression tightened, disappointment flickering across her face. But, Evan continued, I'm willing to pay it anyway. Because the alternative is losing Lena, losing Sophie's happiness, losing the first real purpose I've found since my wife died. So yeah, I'll endure the scrutiny and the accusations and the constant questioning, not because I'm some kind of martyr, but because what we're building is worth more than my comfort. Eleanor studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. Good answer. She stood, smoothing her skirt. The board is having a vote next week on whether to extend the foundation's funding for another 3 years. I'm planning to make a personal donation that matches whatever they approve, contingent on one condition. What condition? That you stay on as Director of Outreach. Your work here has been exemplary, and I won't let small-minded people destroy something valuable because they're uncomfortable with complexity. Eleanor moved toward the door, then paused. Also, Evan, stop renting. It's foolish when you're planning a future with my daughter. I know a real estate agent who specializes in family-friendly neighborhoods with good schools. I'll have her send you some listings. Before Evan could respond, Eleanor was gone, leaving him sitting in his office, slightly shell-shocked and oddly hopeful. When he told Lena about the conversation that evening, she laughed so hard she cried. My mother just told you to stop renting and buy a house? That's her version of giving our relationship her blessing. Is it? Absolutely. She only gives practical advice to people she thinks will stick around. Lena wiped her eyes, still grinning. You've been officially approved by Eleanor Cross. That's harder to achieve than a board vote. Should I be terrified? Probably, but in a good way. The board vote came through the following week. The foundation's funding was approved for 3 years, and Eleanor's matching donation was substantial enough to expand programs across 3 additional boroughs. The vote wasn't unanimous. 2 board members still had reservations about Lena's judgment, but it was enough. We did it, Lena said, reading the email with disbelief and relief in equal measure. You did it, Evan corrected. We did it, Lena insisted. This foundation only works because we're both here. You and me, together. That weekend, they went house hunting. The real estate agent Eleanor had recommended showed them a dozen properties, from renovated brownstones to modern apartments to houses in Brooklyn with actual yards. Sophie came along, offering commentary on each place with brutal 6-year-old honesty. This one smells weird. The walls are boring. Where would my dinosaurs go? They found it in Park Slope, a 3-bedroom townhouse with a small backyard, hardwood floors that creaked, and a kitchen that was dated but functional. It needed work, but it had good bones and enough space for all of them. What do you think, Sweet Pea? Evan asked Sophie, who was already imagining how to arrange her toys in what would be her bedroom. I think yes. Can we get a dog? We're talking about a house, not a dog. But if we have a yard, we could have a dog. A big one that eats dinosaurs. Dogs don't eat dinosaurs, Lena said, trying not to laugh. They would if dinosaurs still existed. The closing happened 6 weeks later, on a gray December afternoon that threatened snow. Lena and Evan signed papers side by side, their names going on a deed together, making permanent what had started in a parking garage 8 months earlier. "This is really happening," Evan said, holding the keys. "This is really happening," Lena confirmed. They moved in over the Christmas holidays. Sophie's bedroom was painted purple per her insistence, and decorated with dinosaur posters and the drawings she'd made throughout the year. The master bedroom got a new bed, their first purchase together that wasn't practical or child-related. The kitchen became Evan's domain, and he immediately began planning upgrades. On Christmas morning, they woke up as a family in their own house. Sophie tore through presents with the enthusiasm of children everywhere, and later, while she was absorbed in building an elaborate dinosaur habitat, Evan pulled Lena aside. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. "It's not much, and it's probably too soon, but Evan Hale, if you're about to propose to me on Christmas morning while our daughter is building dinosaur habitats, you better have a really good ring." He laughed, pulling out a small box. "Our daughter?" "She started calling me Lena Mom last week when she thought I couldn't hear. So yeah, our daughter." Evan opened the box, revealing a simple ring. Not a diamond, but a sapphire, deep blue and elegant. "It was Jennifer's," he said quietly. "Her engagement ring. She made me promise that if I ever found someone else, someone who loved Sophie as much as I did, I'd give them this ring. Said it would mean more than buying something new." Lena felt tears building, understanding the enormity of what he was offering. "Evan, I'm not asking you to replace her. I'm not asking you to be Sophie's mother in any way that erases Jennifer. But I am asking if you'll marry me, if you'll make official what already feels true. That we're a family, the three of us, building something new from everything we've survived." "Yes," Lena said before he could even finish. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. Jennifer had been tall like Lena, had probably had similar hands. "She would have liked you," Evan said. "Jennifer, she would have appreciated how you don't let me get away with my stubborn pride, how you challenge me to be better. I wish I could have known her. In a way, you do. Everything I learned about love and partnership, I learned from her. Everything I know about fighting for what matters, about choosing people over pride, that's all Jennifer's influence. So when you love me, you're loving the man she helped me become." They stood there in their new kitchen, in their new house, wearing rings that connected past and future, holding each other while their daughter played in the next room, and felt the weight of their impossible journey settle into something that felt like home. The wedding happened 3 months later, in March, when the city was just starting to shake off winter. It wasn't at St. Patrick's Cathedral. There were no 200 guests or society page photographers. Instead, they got married at the courthouse, with Sophie as their witness, wearing her Stegosaurus purple dress from the gala. "Do you, Evan Hale, take Lena Cross to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "And do you, Lena Cross, take Evan Hale to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do." "Then by the power vested in me by the state of New York, I pronounce you married. You may kiss." They did, while Sophie cheered and the court clerk smiled, and somewhere in the city, life continued its relentless pace without pausing to notice that two people had just committed to building a future together. Afterward, they had lunch at Rosie's Kitchen, the same diner where Lena had eaten her first meal after running from her wedding. Rosie herself brought out a cake she'd made specially, chocolate with elaborate frosting that tasted like home. "Congratulations, you two," she said, hugging them both. "About time you made it official." That evening, they held a small reception at the foundation. Not a gala, not a society event, just the people who mattered. Maria and the other staff members, Mrs. Chen and the neighbors who'd become family, Lena's parents who'd flown in from their annual European trip specifically for this, and dozens of the families the foundation had helped, single parents who understood what Evan and Lena had built because they'd benefited from it directly. "I want to say something," Lena announced when dinner was winding down. She stood, Evan's hand in hers, looking at the gathered crowd. 8 months ago, I ran away from a wedding because I realized I was marrying someone who saw me as an asset rather than a person. And in that parking garage, feeling more lost than I'd ever felt, a complete stranger offered me a way out with no questions and no judgment. She looked at Evan, who was trying not to cry. That stranger became my partner, my best friend, and now my husband. He taught me that happiness doesn't require a trust fund or a 5-year plan. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help. That love means choosing someone every single day, even when it's complicated and scary and nothing like what you planned. Lena turned back to the crowd. This foundation exists because Evan showed me what really matters. Not stock prices or quarterly returns, but people. Families. The single parents working impossible hours to give their kids a chance. The children who deserve to feel secure and loved and supported. The belief that everyone deserves help when they need it, without shame or judgment. She raised her glass. So thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in this mission. And thank you for understanding that sometimes the best things in life are the ones that don't make sense on paper but feel exactly right in your heart. The room erupted in applause, and Sophie shouted, "That's my parents!" with such pride that everyone laughed. Later, when the reception had wound down and Sophie had fallen asleep on a couch, Evan and Lena stood on the foundation's front steps, watching the city lights twinkle. "We did it," Evan said. "Against all odds, despite every complication, we actually did it." "Did you ever doubt we would?" "Every single day," he admitted. "And I probably will keep doubting every single day. But I'll also keep choosing you every single day, which I think matters more than certainty." "Much more," Lena agreed. 6 months later, the Cross Foundation announced its biggest initiative yet, a pilot program providing comprehensive support for single-parent households, including subsidized housing, healthcare, childcare, and career training. The program was funded by a combination of private donations, corporate partnerships, and a substantial grant from Cross Industries itself. Evan stood at a press conference, fielding questions from reporters who'd once questioned his qualifications. How does it feel to go from struggling single father to director of one of the city's most successful charitable organizations? "It feels like coming full circle," Evan answered honestly. "A year ago, I was the person applying for help. Now I get to be the person providing it. That's not success because I escaped poverty. It's success because I get to help others escape it too." "And your relationship with Lena Cross? Does that complicate your work?" "My relationship with Lena is the reason this work exists. She saw a broken system and decided to fix it. I provide the perspective of someone who lived through that broken system. Together, we're building something that actually works. So no, our relationship doesn't complicate the work. It makes the work possible." That evening, Lena came home to find Evan teaching Sophie how to ride the bike they'd gotten her for her 7th birthday. She watched from the doorway as Evan ran alongside, holding the seat, encouraging Sophie to pedal faster. "I've got you, sweet pea. I've got you." "Let go, Dad. I want to try by myself." "You sure?" "I'm sure." Evan let go, and Sophie wobbled for a terrifying moment before finding her balance. She rode in circles around their small backyard, laughing with pure joy. "Look! Lena Mom! Look! I'm doing it!" Lena Mom. The name had stuck, becoming Sophie's chosen way to acknowledge that she had 2 mothers, one in memory, one in presence, and both mattered. "I see you, baby. You're amazing." Later, after Sophie was in bed, exhausted and proud, Evan and Lena sat in their backyard, the spring air warm and full of promise. "I've been thinking," Lena said, "about expanding the foundation nationally. Chicago first, then maybe LA, Atlanta, other cities with high single-parent populations." "That's ambitious." "We've proven the model works. Why not share it?" "Why not indeed," Evan agreed. Then carefully, "I've been thinking too, about adopting Sophie, officially, making legal what already feels true." Lena turned to him, her eyes wide. "Really?" "You're already her parent in every way that matters. The paperwork is just catching up to reality. If you want that." "I want that," Lena said, her voice thick with emotion. "I really, really want that." They sat in silence for a moment, both of them thinking about the journey that had brought them here. From a parking garage to a partnership to a family to something bigger than either of them had imagined. "You know what's funny?" Evan said. "Marcus was right about one thing. What's that? He said I'd never understand the burden of real wealth, real power, real consequence. And he was right. I don't understand it the way he does, as something to be hoarded and protected and used for personal gain. Evan looked at their house, thought about the foundation, about Sophie sleeping peacefully upstairs. But I understand it the way you do, as responsibility, as opportunity, as a chance to build something that matters more than any individual success. That's the difference between people who have power and people who deserve it, Lena said. Deserve is a strong word. You deserve it. You've earned it. Not through inheritance or connections or strategic marriages, but by surviving the worst and choosing to help others survive it too. A year later, on a sunny afternoon in May, Lena stood in front of a crowd at the National Nonprofit Leadership Conference. The Cross Foundation had just been awarded the Innovation in Social Services Prize, recognizing its comprehensive approach to supporting single-parent families. When I started this foundation, Lena said into the microphone, I thought I was helping people, and I was. But what I didn't realize was how much they would help me, how much I would learn from every parent struggling to make rent, every child worried about their next meal, every family doing everything right and still falling behind. She found Evan in the crowd, sitting with Sophie, both of them watching her with pride. This award isn't mine. It belongs to every person who had the courage to ask for help, to every single parent who's working 3 jobs and still showing up for their kids, to every person who believed that a better system was possible and helped us build it. Lena smiled. And especially to the man who taught me that the best things in life are the ones you choose, not the ones you inherit. Thank you all. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, as they left the conference, Sophie tugged on Lena's sleeve. Mom, when I grow up, can I work at the foundation too? Lena Mom had become just Mom somewhere along the way, the hyphen dropping off as Sophie's comfort with their family configuration solidified. You can do anything you want, sweetheart, Lena said. But the foundation would be lucky to have you, Evan added, just like it's lucky to have your mom. Both my moms, Sophie corrected, the one I remember and the one I have now. I'm lucky too. That night, tucked into bed in the hotel, Sophie asked the question she'd asked a dozen times since they'd begun the adoption proceedings. When will I officially be Sophie Hale Cross? 2 more weeks, Lena said. The judge signs the papers and then it's official. Will that change anything? Not a single thing, Evan assured her. You'll still be you. We'll still be us. We're just making the paperwork match reality. Good, Sophie said, satisfied, because I like our reality. After she was asleep, Evan and Lena stood on the hotel balcony, looking out over the unfamiliar city. Do you ever think about that day? Lena asked. In the parking garage? How different everything could have been. Every day, Evan admitted. If I'd minded my own business, if you'd gone through with the wedding, if either of us had chosen the safe path instead of the honest one, we'd both be miserable, Lena finished. Probably, but we'd be miserable separately, which honestly seems worse. Lena laughed, leaning into him. You know what I think about? I think about Sophie, 10 years from now, telling people her origin story. My dad helped my mom escape her wedding in a parking garage, and then they fell in love, and now they run a foundation that helps people like us. That's a pretty good origin story. The best, Lena agreed. 2 weeks later, in a courthouse not unlike the one where they'd gotten married, a judge signed papers that made Sophie officially Sophie Hale Cross, daughter of Evan Hale and Lena Cross, loved and chosen, and legally part of a family that had built itself from courage and honest conversations and the belief that love was worth fighting for. Congratulations, the judge said, smiling at Sophie. How does it feel to have 2 last names? It feels like I have 2 families, Sophie said seriously, the one I started with and the one I chose. Both matter. That's very wise. I know, Sophie said without arrogance. I'm 7.5 now. I know a lot of things. As they left the courthouse, Sophie walking between her parents, holding both their hands, a photographer caught the moment. The image ran in several papers the next day, not as a scandal or a society piece, but as a human interest story. The caption read, Cross Foundation leaders celebrate family expansion. Marcus Ashford saw the photo. He'd moved on to another wealthy woman, another strategic relationship that looked good on paper. He felt a flash of what might have been envy, quickly suppressed. Lena had made her choice, and he'd made his. They'd both gotten what they wanted. Except looking at that photo, Lena's genuine smile, Evan's obvious pride, Sophie's pure joy, Marcus suspected that maybe Lena had gotten the better deal after all. 5 years after that parking garage conversation, the Cross Foundation operated in 12 cities, had helped over 10,000 families, and had become the gold standard for comprehensive single-parent support services. Evan had written a book about his experience that became required reading in social work programs. Lena had revolutionized Cross Industries' corporate responsibility initiatives, proving that companies could be both profitable and ethical. And Sophie, now 12, and as obsessed with paleontology as ever, came home from school one day with a permission slip for a field trip to the Museum of Natural History. "They're going to the dinosaur exhibit," she announced, "the same one Grandma Eleanor took me to during the gala." "That's where it all started," Lena said, signing the permission slip. "You getting interested in dinosaurs." "Actually," Sophie corrected, "it all started when Dad helped you escape your wedding. The dinosaurs were just a bonus." "Fair point. Can I ask you something?" Sophie's expression turned serious. "Was it scary, running away like that?" "Terrifying," Lena admitted, "but you did it anyway." "I did it anyway, because sometimes being brave means doing the terrifying thing because it's the right thing." "Is that why you and Dad help people through the foundation? Because it's the right thing even when it's hard?" "Exactly that," Evan said, joining the conversation. "Being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and choosing to help anyway." Sophie nodded, processing this. "When I grow up, I want to be brave like that. Brave enough to choose what's right instead of what's easy." "You're already brave, sweet pea," Evan said, "every single day." That night, after Sophie was asleep, Evan found Lena in their home office reviewing foundation reports. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, looking over her shoulder at the numbers that represented real families, real lives changed. "We did something good here," he said quietly. "We're still doing something good," Lena corrected. "This is just the beginning." "Always planning ahead, aren't you?" "Always," she confirmed, turning in his arms. "That's what happens when you marry an overachiever who used to run a corporation." "I thought I married a woman who ran away from her wedding in a parking garage because she was brave enough to choose happiness over obligation." "You married both versions. They're the same person." "I know," Evan said, kissing her forehead. "That's why I married you." They stood there in their home office, in the house they'd bought together, with their daughter sleeping upstairs and their foundation changing lives across 12 cities, and felt the impossible weight of their journey settle into something that felt like destiny. It hadn't been easy. It had been complicated and messy and terrifying and sometimes almost too hard to bear. But they'd chosen it anyway. Chosen each other. Chosen honesty. Chosen love, even when it didn't make sense on paper. And that choice, that brave, terrifying, impossible choice made in a parking garage on a rainy Tuesday morning, had become the foundation of everything that mattered. Outside, the city hummed with its endless energy, full of people making their own impossible choices, running toward their own uncertain futures, building their own definitions of success. And somewhere in that city, someone was probably standing in a parking garage right now, trying to decide whether to choose safety or honesty, obligation or happiness, the life everyone expected or the life they actually wanted. Lena hoped they chose happiness, hoped they were brave enough to run toward what felt right, even when it terrified them, hoped they understood that the best stories don't start with certainty. They start with courage and honest conversations, and the belief that sometimes the most important thing you can do is help someone escape toward the life they're meant to live, even if it starts in a parking garage, even if it makes no sense on paper, even if everyone thinks you're crazy. Because love, real love, is worth every impossible choice, every single one.